Chapter 410. At this moment, the thick wall that wrapped Naruto's body began to expand like a rice cake. The originally earth-colored scales of the venomous snakes were now dyed a crimson red. Wisps of hot air drifted out from the gaps between the venomous snakes. Boom! A cracking sound clearly passed into everyone's ears. The layers of poisonous snakes that originally wrapped Naruto's body were all blown away by a powerful force, leaving only a large black egg-shaped sphere in Naruto's original position. The surface of the giant black egg was scorched red. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't difficult to discover that the giant black egg was actually composed of poisonous snakes that had been scorched into charcoal by the high temperature. So what kind of power did Naruto, who was wrapped in it, burst out to be able to turn the poisonous snakes into charcoal like this? Crack! A crack appeared on the giant egg, and a wisp of nine tails chakra drifted out from this crack, and a roar also came out from the giant egg. Roar! 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 It was as if he was enduring great pain. The roar was so heart-wrenching that it tore at the heart. But not long after, this huge roar came to an abrupt stop as if it was strangled by the throat. Whether it was Orochimaru or Kakashi standing on the side, they had already felt an instinctive threat from the depths of their hearts. Crack! 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 The cracking sound became more intense, and the black giant egg was now full of cracks. Finally, the fragments on the giant egg slowly fell to the ground under the influence of gravity. With such a start, the giant egg naturally disintegrated even more quickly. Finally, Naruto, who was wrapped in the giant egg, finally revealed his figure. But everyone who saw the current Naruto couldn't believe that this was actually the Naruto they were familiar with. Because at this moment, Naruto no longer looked the same as before. Naruto's skin seemed to have been burned, and what replaced Naruto's skin was a dark red chakra raiment made of pure chakra. At this moment, the characteristics of a fox on Naruto's body became more and more obvious, and he looked like a little nine tails. At this moment, the number of chakra tails swaying behind Naruto's back had accumulated to 4. It could be seen that Naruto had used a lot of power from his 9 tails. Yamato and Kakashi's eyes were gloomy at this moment. 9 tails transformed into Yanbi. This was the most powerful bijou level that Naruto had shown so far. It was also this level of bijou that caused a rare powerhouse like Jiraiya to suffer a near-death injury. Even now, there was a huge scar on Jiraiya's body, silently telling the powerful power of Naruto in the Yanbi state. Yes. Yes. That's it, it's interesting, that's why I'm qualified to compete with Sasuke. Naruto, Naruto. You are indeed the most suitable whetstone for Sasuke. Orochimaru looked at Naruto's appearance at this moment, and his mouth seemed to be shouting uncontrollably. Naruto completely lost his consciousness at this moment, but he seemed to feel that the laughter of the little bug in front of him was too harsh, so his eyes, which had no human characteristics, stared closely at Orochimaru at this moment. Without warning, Naruto had appeared beside Orochimaru and directly attacked Orochimaru with his claws. Unlike the last time, this time Orochimaru really didn't react at all, and he was hit by such a move and flew out. The body flying through the air had obviously shown a strange angle, and Orochimaru's spine was directly broken under this. But 2 hands stretched out from Orochimaru's mouth at this moment, and they drilled out of Orochimaru's body. Although his body was sticky and looked very disgusting, the effect was very outstanding. The originally broken spine had been completely restored at this moment. Ha ha ha. It's really the feeling of blood boiling that I haven't felt for a long time. Naruto, I'll let you see my long-awaited serious battle. With a touch of fanaticism, Orochimaru opened his mouth wide, and the long tongue wrapped around the sharp Kusanagi sword was pulled out of Orochimaru's body. Orochimaru also took the sword hilt, held the Kusanagi sword in his hand, and rushed towards Naruto. On a hidden island in the Kusanagi country, a figure wearing a slightly loose kimono was slowly wiping the long sword in his hand. Although the loose kimono covered the outline of the man's body, the body that was full of power looked so perfect. On the kimono, a fan-shaped family emblem was so eye-catching. This was the emblem of the famous extinct family in the shinobi world, the Uchiha clan. This figure is naturally Uchiha Sasuke, who has been with Orochimaru for 3 years after leaving the Wood Leaf. His originally cold eyes have become colder and colder at this moment. If stared at by such eyes, no matter who it is, they can't help but feel fear in their heart. Looking up at the clock hanging on the wall, Sasuke saw the time clearly and murmured slightly. Where did Orochimaru go? He obviously made an appointment to train, but he didn't come at all. It seems like something interesting has happened. Although his words seemed to be full of interest, Sasuke still looked unmoved and continued wiping the long sword in his hand. Sasuke, come with me. Obviously, there was no one in the empty room except Sasuke, but suddenly there was a voice that didn't belong to Sasuke. You know, Sasuke's room is not a place that anyone can enter. If Orochimaru's men broke into Sasuke's room, Sasuke can directly kill such a guy. But obviously, someone broke into his room without permission, but Sasuke didn't look annoyed at all. Because at this moment, a figure wearing a black robe appeared in the corner of Sasuke's eyes, and the huge hood on this person's head has been taken off. The gentle face and pitch-black hair were very familiar, and the sword hilt peeking out from the black robe further highlighted the identity of this person. Chapter 411. Sasuke looked at Nangongja, who was standing in front of him. His originally cold eyes had a slight ripple. With a little doubt, Sasuke asked Nangongja, sure enough, Orochimaru didn't stay in the base during the training, and Kabuto was nowhere to be seen. These two guys really don't feel good if they don't do something. The fact that you are here proves that this matter has something to do with Konoha. Sasuke, who felt that he seemed to have grasped the key to the problem, gently rubbed his chin with his fingers, and then his eyes suddenly flashed, but it was followed by an indescribable sadness. It's been 3 years, huh? That idiot was able to hold himself back for 3 whole years before he finally found his way here. Nangongja naturally knew who the fool was. Only Naruto can make Sasuke miss him so much, and only Naruto can make Sasuke show such a complicated expression. You. Minamiya looked at Sasuke, who seemed to be complaining, and slowly walked to Sasuke's side. He put his index finger completely on Sasuke's temple on both sides of his head, and drilled it. In the past 3 years of training, Sasuke was actually aware of Nangongja's movements, and he wasn't affected by the drilling of his temples. But he still deliberately made an unbearable look, maybe. Sasuke also missed being treated so intimately. Obviously, you're so happy, but you have to look so proud. After teasing Sasuke for a while, Nangongja still looked serious and said to Sasuke seriously, don't worry. I believe that you've been with Orochimaru for so long, you must know what kind of person he is. Now, Kakashi, Naruto, and the others are engaged in a fierce battle with Orochimaru. Although they can hold on for a while, it's not a long-term solution. So I came here, hoping that you can watch the battle with me, and save Kakashi and the others when things go south. What do you think? Nangongja knew that Sasuke has grown a lot by staying with Orochimaru. Sasuke's understanding of what to do and Orochimaru is far beyond Nangongja. Although Nangongja hoped that he could take Sasuke to save the situation, everything should be decided by Sasuke himself, right? I understand what you mean. Looking at Nangongzetsu, Sasuke thought for a while, then said to Nangongzetsu, actually, I know that the so-called rescue in your mouth is only one of them. You actually hope that I can reappear in front of everyone through this rescue to show my closeness to Konoha, am I right? The conversation between the two didn't cover up so much, and it has always been so straightforward. Therefore, Nangongja didn't mind that his little thoughts were exposed by Sasuke. Instead, he nodded generously and said to Sasuke, that's right. It's undeniable that I do mean this. I acquiesce to you coming to Orochimaru's side because I know that such an environment that keeps you tense at all times is the most suitable place for you to develop. Although Orochimaru has all kinds of problems, it is undeniable that he is indeed a real genius, and he can help you make great progress. Although the two sides stood in different positions, Nangongja still maintained great respect for Orochimaru. In every era, there will always be some geniuses who are called madmen, although they may be rejected by the secular world, and even do a lot of things that look extremely bloody and horrible. But you can never deny the value of these geniuses, and Orochimaru is a genius of this era. Whether it's living corpse reincarnation or Edo Tensei, as well as a variety of genetic engineering and ninjutsu research, Orochimaru has made outstanding contributions. It's no exaggeration to say that Orochimaru has pulled up the ninja world's technology tree by a long time with his own strength. But although Orochimaru has all kinds of advantages, Nangongja suddenly changed the topic. Although Orochimaru is knowledgeable, he is also insidious and cunning, and he doesn't have 100% goodwill towards you. You are his test subject, and making you stronger is just a part of his experiment. You have absorbed enough nutrients and experience, and your future growth is no longer something that Orochimaru can help you with. What you need is to find your own path, and this kind of pathfinding behavior can be done anywhere. Yes, at this moment, Sasuke's strength has actually reached a bottleneck, and he is only one step away from reaching the so-called Kage level. Nangongja, who has crossed such a threshold, is naturally clear about it, and Sasuke, who is standing on the edge of this threshold, is also clear about it. Nangong-sensei, what I want is not only the improvement of strength. Sasuke shook his head and said to Nangongja, I believe that sensei also knows that a person's strength is only one aspect of combat power, and to a large extent, a person's will is also extremely important. I have indeed made great progress by staying with Orochimaru, but at the same time, Orochimaru began to slowly become a shadow in my heart. This snake-like man with a gloomy aura was a barrier in my heart at this moment. I can clearly feel that as long as I can face him with my own strength, and defeat him, the future will be smooth. So, Orochimaru is the obstacle in Sasuke's heart? It's not unreasonable. After all, Orochimaru can be said to be the strongest person that Sasuke has met who has shown the most malice towards him. The fear of the strong slowly turned into a shadow in his heart, and becoming a roadblock in his future development is indeed something that is very likely to happen. Looking at Sasuke's firm eyes, even Nangongja couldn't say anything more. Everyone has the right to make their own choices. Since Sasuke is ready to face Orochimaru, Nangongja felt that he didn't have to say anything more. Moreover, now is indeed the best time to defeat Orochimaru. His body that originally needed to be replaced has degenerated, and the soul of the arm that used to cast ninjutsu has been cut off by Shinigami. Although Orochimaru has used various means to re-release ninjutsu, there are still many restrictions. Chapter 4:12. Kid, you always push yourself so hard that you can't get the slightest chance to breathe. Looking at Sasuke, Nangongja vaguely saw the kid who was practicing hard in the Uchiha clan before dawn. I won't persuade you to go back with me, and I won't let you save Naruto and the others. But you have to come with me to see your teammates and sensei. I want you to know that they still miss you in their hearts these 3 years. Yes, Nangongja still hoped that Sasuke could go with him to see his teammates whom he had not seen for 3 years. Sasuke stayed with Orochimaru. Although he made progress, Nangongja didn't feel that his mental state was very good. Facing death every day, facing the numbing training, Sasuke's mind was actually very stressed. Nangongja took Sasuke with him. In fact, he hoped to build a pillar in Sasuke's heart in this way. People always need something to support their mind in order to continue moving forward. Nodding, Sasuke obviously agreed with Nangongja's suggestion. Although there were a lot of patrolling ninjas in Orochimaru's base, these ninjas were completely unable to block or even detect Nangongja and Sasuke's figures. The two jumped from tree to tree, but because each of them had something on their mind, they didn't talk much. Nangongja only got the information that Orochimaru and Kakashi were fighting, but the specific situation was not clear. After all, the strength of the Blood Cloak Pavilion spies was average, and the time was tight, so Nangongja was actually very worried that Naruto and the others couldn't withstand Orochimaru's attack. Sasuke was actually a little nervous at this moment. After all, he was about to see his friends and sensei whom he hadn't seen for 3 years. He didn't know what kind of changes had happened to everyone in the past 3 years. That kind of uneasiness was tightly entangled in Sasuke's heart, and it was difficult to eliminate. Just as the two of them were rushing with all their might, a huge explosion suddenly sounded in their ears. Nangongja made a prompt decision and stood directly on the top of the nearest tall tree. Looking from a distance, he could only see a large amount of smoke and dust formed by the explosion in front of him. And that direction was the location of the Bridge of Heaven and Earth, where Orochimaru and Naruto's party were fighting, according to Nangongja. Naruto, Sakura, and Kakashi were very important to Nangongja. After seeing such a powerful explosion, Nangongja was also a little panicked. Sasuke, it seems that there's something. I'll rush to the Bridge of Heaven and Earth at full speed to see what happened. After explaining to Sasuke, Nangongja also bit his thumb, and blood slowly flowed out of the wound. Nangongja pressed his bleeding thumb on the lion's head print on his shoulder. The originally dark lion's head print was instantly dyed with a dark red color. At this moment, in order to hurry, Nangongja actually summoned the black lion Ryo that he hadn't summoned for a long time. Standing on top of Ryo's head, Nangongja roughly explained the direction to Ryo, and immediately urged Ryo to move in the direction he said. Ryo also felt the urgency in Nangongja's heart, so his body was constantly flickering with black lightning, and his huge body directly floated in the sky. Looking at the leaving Nangongja and the huge black lion Ryo, Sasuke's eyes flashed with golden light, and a brand new ninjutsu began to construct in Sasuke's mind. But now is not the time to study ninjutsu. Sasuke also quietly wrote down such an inspiration, and then continued to rush in the direction that Nangongja described to him. Sasuke didn't have no psychic beast, but Sasuke's psychic beast was inherited from Orochimaru, the snake clan of the Earth Dragon Cave. Once Sasuke summons the python to help him hurry, it's no different from directly telling Orochimaru his whereabouts. So Sasuke can only rely on his own speed to rush to the Bridge of Heaven and Earth. On the way, Sasuke happened to meet Kabuto, who was seriously injured and unconscious. But Sasuke didn't have any good intentions towards Kabuto. If it wasn't because of the urgency of time, Sasuke would have killed Kabuto with a knife. After all, every time this guy looked at his eyes, although it was hidden deeply, it revealed a little bit of malice-like provocation, which really made Sasuke very unhappy. Finally, Sasuke rushed to the vicinity of the Bridge of Heaven and Earth with his own 2 legs. But when he looked carefully, there was no shadow of the bridge here. The originally flat ground has now turned into a deep pit, and Nangongja summoned Li Yang was pressing something on the ground with his claws at this moment. A man with a simple and honest face, wearing a wood-leaf helmet on his head, was constantly forming seals in his hands, as if he was releasing some kind of ninjutsu. Orochimaru stood on the side, staring at Nangongja, who was standing on Li Yang, as if he was always ready to deal with Nangongja if he suddenly attacked. The ninja who was forming seals was naturally Yamato, who could use wood release, and the one who was pressed under Li Yang's palm was naturally Naruto, who had entered the Yanbi state. If it weren't for Li Yang's ability to use Black Thunder, which was far more powerful than ordinary lightning, it would be more difficult to subdue Naruto. Finally, Yamato's originally closed eyes suddenly opened. The seals in his hands also stopped, and he shouted in the direction of Naruto with his palm open. Naruto-style ear technique, Kuin Jirushi. At this moment, an emerald green pendant was wrapped around Yamato's open palm. A soft but difficult to ignore light emitted from the pendant, and under the guidance of Yamato's own chakra, it rushed towards Naruto, who was in the Yanbi state. As the light entered Naruto's body, the Nine Tails chakra wrapped around his body also slowly faded, revealing his severely burned and blackened skin. It's actually Naruto? It's not that Sasuke didn't see Naruto in the Nine Tails mode, but this kind of Naruto with the fourth tail was too scary. Could it be that the surrounding situation was caused by Naruto's power alone? This is simply unimaginable. For Naruto, Sasuke didn't feel any jealousy. On the contrary, when Sasuke saw Naruto's powerful burst of power, he became excited. The idea that just appeared in his mind has become more and more clear. This ninjutsu will be his trump card in the future. Chapter 413. Seeing that Naruto had returned to normal, although there were some injuries on his body, it wasn't too big of a problem. As Tsunade's disciple, Sakura, although such injuries are troublesome, they can be completely healed. Looking at Naruto's severely burned body with some dark skin, Nangongja couldn't help but look at Orochimaru, who was guarding himself below. It's been a long time. Nangongjun Orochimaru naturally noticed Nangongja's gaze, so he also put away his defensive movements. Orochimaru knew that if Nangongja really wanted to fight with him, he would never make eye contact with him like this. Instead, he would directly stab Orochimaru's body with his black sword. Indeed, the last time we formally met seems to have been a long time ago. Hearing Orochimaru greeting him, Minamiya also said to Orochimaru with a hint of reminiscence, "I still remember the scene where you bowed to the subordinates of those people who were about to carry out extremely dangerous missions. I didn't expect that in just a few years, the iconic hero of Woodleaf back then would become the biggest enemy of Woodleaf." Yes, Nangongja was actually deliberately provoking and testing Orochimaru. Nangongja actually wanted to see how much strength Orochimaru can exert now. Although Orochimaru is Sasuke's spiritual barrier, it's not a bad thing to be able to eliminate such a dangerous person in advance. Nangongjun is narrow-minded. Hearing Nangongja's words, Orochimaru wasn't angry, but he didn't take it seriously. "I believe that Nangongjun actually understands me. After all, we all know that Woodleaf is too narrow-minded. How could there be a dragon in a pond? When the dragon grows up, this small pond can no longer accommodate us." For Orochimaru's words, Nangongja naturally knew that it was correct. A stable environment is really good, and it makes people want to protect it desperately. This is also the reason why Woodleaf is far more cohesive than others, and it's the reason why Woodleaf is the leader of the 5 great ninja villages. Ordinary people are naturally the most suitable for a peaceful life, but ninjas themselves are born to kill. Once they lose the sense of crisis from the depths of their soul, it's difficult for them to become a real strong person. This is also the reason why Woodleaf's resources and population are not lacking, and the number of jonin doesn't form a crushing advantage compared to several other ninja villages. However, even if Nangongja understood Orochimaru's TS, Kakashi and Yamato were still next to him, Nangongja could only smile, and didn't express his opinion. "Li Yang, I'll have to trouble you this time. You can go back first, after all, I still need your arse." Ignoring Orochimaru, Nangongja began to talk to Li Yang. Li Yang herself is relying on her own strength to guard the Lion Clan space, and the time she can come to other places is indeed limited. Li Yang also understood Nangongja's meaning, so she picked up the palm she had just pressed on Naruto's body, and looked at the scorched marks on the palm of her hand, muttering something in her mouth. Her figure slowly disappeared. Not long after Li Yang disappeared, Naruto, who had fallen unconscious on the ground, also quietly woke up. A pair of eyes with a strange look of confusion and sobriety intertwined, looked at the environment around him. "Aren't we on the bridge of heaven and earth? Why did it suddenly become a big pit? And me? How did I faint?" He kept asking himself one question after another, but Naruto found that he couldn't answer any of them, so he instinctively looked around, hoping to find someone who can answer his questions. Naruto's gaze drifted to Sakura, and Sakura's eyes had a look of deep distress. Naruto's gaze drifted to Kakashi, and Kakashi's eyes had a feeling of drifting. Naruto's gaze drifted to Yamato, and Yamato's originally wooden face had a strange feeling of wanting to say something but abruptly swallowing it back. "No one can tell me what happened?" Naruto's eyes then looked around, and finally a familiar figure appeared in front of Naruto's eyes. Soft long hair, gentle cheeks, a long black patterned robe, of course. What was more eye-catching was the dark and simple-looking black sword in his hand. Nangong-san. What's going on? Naruto's heart instinctively felt panic, because he suddenly woke up like this, and the surroundings turned into ruins, and even people were injured. Naruto has seen this scene before. When he traveled with Jiraiya in the ninja world, this kind of situation happened once. Nangongja didn't avoid Naruto's gaze. Instead, he walked to Naruto's side, squatted down, and pressed his hand on the shoulder of Naruto, who was lying on the ground. You did it, obviously. It was just a few words, but it set off a huge wave in Naruto's heart. In an instant, Naruto thought of his state of being immersed in the violent aura of Nine Tails chakra. Did I lose myself? Was I affected by Nine Tails will contained in Nine Tails chakra? Looking at Naruto, Nangongja thought that Naruto would be depressed for a long time, but then Naruto's eyes opened. With a pair of eyes with some guilt, and more determination, he said to Nangongja, Nangong-san, I understand. Thank you for not being perfunctory, but telling me the truth. Horny Sage told me before that Column Force's real strength is not by borrowing the power of tailed beasts, but by using his own chakra to control the power of tailed beasts. The most terrible person is Column Force, but the one who always keeps his reason is Column Force. It's my own lack of cultivation that caused this situation, and even caused Horny Sage to be seriously injured. This is my responsibility. Only by knowing how terrible it is when you lose control can you summon the courage to fully control your own power. Saying that, Naruto's face actually revealed a smile. If it wasn't for the deep sorrow in his eyes, Naruto's smile would be very convincing. Tempering one's heart is a necessary process to improve one's strength. Only by understanding one's heart and constantly sweeping away the dust in one's heart can one improve. This is Naruto's own experience. Nangongja won't interfere. Only when Naruto breaks through this kind of barrier by himself can there be real gains. Chapter 4:14. To be honest, as a person with Bijou, Column Force. Naruto, your progress is not as obvious as Sasuke's. Is Sasuke more talented than you, or are you just too stupid? If you're just like this, I don't think you're the one who can compete with Sasuke. Hearing Naruto's speech full of expectations for the future, Orochimaru, a typical scientist full of rational thinking, naturally said these inappropriate words. These words are indeed true, and the truth that everyone can understand. But when Orochimaru said these true words, it really stimulated Naruto, who was full of fighting spirit at the moment. I know, I'm not a genius. He thought that Naruto would say something to refute, but he didn't expect Naruto to admit the fact that he's not a genius. When it comes to learning ninjutsu, I'm not as good as Sasuke. It may only take him a few days to learn a ninjutsu, but I've been practicing sanjutsu for several years. I'm not as good as Sakura in controlling chakra. She even learned Tsunade Grandma's medical ninjutsu, but I can only practice climbing trees and treading water desperately. I don't have Shikamaru's wisdom, I don't have Lee's perseverance, I can only desperately hope to keep up with my friends by using the 9 tails in my body, which I hate. I'm not comparable to them, I've never been a genius, and no one has ever said that I'm a genius. I can only try my best to catch up with these people who were originally with me. Maybe I can't keep up with Sasuke's pace now, but this is not an excuse for me to choose not to face all this. Facing difficulties head-on and speaking frankly is my way of ninja. As he spoke, the burning stars in Naruto's eyes were like the sun hanging high in the sky, so bright that people couldn't look directly at it. Whether it's Nangongja or Orochimaru, who are not so keen on the so-called ninjutsu, or people like Kakashi and Yamato, who care about would leaf far more than them, it's difficult for them to do such a thing. It's really a disgusting shining light, a voice suddenly sounded. Although they didn't want to admit it, they had to admit that this voice did speak out the thoughts hidden in the hearts of many people present. The more beautiful something is, the more enviable it is, but it also makes people can't help but destroy it. The so-called incomplete beauty that people talked about was actually a kind of negation in the hearts of humans towards things that were too perfect. After hearing such a voice, Naruto's first felt anger, but then a familiar feeling. There was only one person who could speak in such a way and have such an attitude towards the world. That's Uchiha Sasuke, who abandoned a close friend like himself and left the village where he grew up. Sasuke? 3 years, the close friend he missed for 3 years finally appeared in front of him. Although he ridiculed himself, Naruto didn't feel angry, but there was an unexpected sense of familiarity. After all, he hasn't heard such a cold tone for a long time. Holding back the agitation in his heart, Naruto turned his head and looked in the direction of the voice. A loose black and purple kimono, similar to Orochimaru's belt, holding a silver-white long sword in his hand, and a very familiar blood-red Sharingan with 3 tomos slowly rotating slowly. Isn't this person his teammate Uchiha Sasuke? Your mouth is still so poisonous. Looking at Sasuke, Naruto pretended to be relaxed and wanted to laugh at Sasuke like before. You stayed with Orochimaru for so long, isn't it time to go home? Naruto's voice was very loud, and everyone present heard it clearly. But Sasuke seemed to automatically ignore Naruto's voice, walked to Orochimaru's side, and said to Orochimaru with the same indifferent tone, "Training, why didn't you come?" Orochimaru listened to Sasuke's words, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. He waved his pale hand in front of him, as if he was introducing the enemy he just fought, and said, "Can't help it, suddenly a group of rats came out of nowhere in front of us. Seeing that the rats were so dishonest, I naturally had to go out and eliminate these noisy things, and let them know that they shouldn't swagger in front of a poisonous snake." It seems that when Orochimaru introduced his former teammates, Sasuke was aware of the existence of Naruto and the others. His indifferent eyes swept across Naruto, Sakura, Kakashi, Nangongja, and Yamato and Sasai, who he wasn't so familiar with. The strong murderous intent couldn't be concealed at all. At this moment, Sasuke didn't look like a sinister and cunning snake like Orochimaru, but more like a goshawk hovering over his territory in the sky, wanting to see his food. "Just these rats and you ended up like this?" Sasuke looked at Orochimaru's embarrassed figure, as if he was disgusted with Orochimaru's weakness, and then said, "Since it's so difficult to eliminate these rats, then I don't mind killing them one by one." Hearing Sasuke's indifferent words, whether it was Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura, who were more familiar with Sasuke, or Yamato and Sasai, who weren't so familiar with Sasuke, they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. They knew that Sasuke was serious. "Sasuke. How did you become like this?" Sakura asked Sasuke with some difficulty, and Sasuke also looked in the direction of Sakura's voice, as if looking at a weak rabbit on the ground. "I thought that Naruto's progress in the past few years was too small, but I didn't expect you to be worse than Naruto. With your half-baked medical ninjutsu, you dare to come out and say that you're Tsunade Heime's disciple? It seems that Tsunade Heim is too kind." Sasuke's ruthless words were like a knife inserted into Sakura's heart. At that time, she was weak and could only hide behind Naruto and Sasuke in exchange for a moment of peace. 3 years later, she received Tsunade Heime's teaching and experienced Nangongja's training. In Sasuke's eyes, she was still a useless little girl. Chapter 4:15. Looking at Sasuke provoking his former teammate with words like this, Nangongja didn't know why he vaguely saw Itachi Uchiha. Over the years, hasn't Itachi Uchiha been treating Sasuke in such a blunt way, making the people he cares about hate him in order to become stronger? Sure enough, they're a family, and their way of doing things is quite similar. In fact, is Sakura and Naruto's strength really as weak as Sasuke said? No, it's not like that. Naruto has the 9 tails, and no one can easily ignore the power erupting from him without considering the consequences. Sakura, as a disciple jointly trained by Tsunade and himself, has soared from an ordinary genin to the current jounin level in just 3 years. She's also a skilled medical ninja. Such a person can be called a genius in other places, but in Sasuke's eyes, she's the shame of Nangongja and Tsunade. The more you care about someone, the easier it is to hurt yourself. For Naruto and Sakura, it's the same. The two of them didn't calm down enough to think about why Sasuke came out at such a critical moment to ridicule them. They also didn't understand that chakra has been constantly condensing in Orochimaru's body at this moment. They just put their eyes on Sasuke, and that's the ability to judge things. Even Kakashi was slightly hurt by Sasuke's words at this time. On the contrary, Yamato and Sasai, who weren't so familiar with Sasuke, seemed to be very puzzled by Sasuke's behavior at this moment. What kind of bond was it that could turn these people into the current situation? There was no time to think about it, but something happened again. Because of Sasuke's provocation, Naruto's slightly fierce eyes and Sakura's clenched fists were signs that the battle was about to happen. Sasuke, on the other hand, seemed to turn a blind eye to it. He gently unsheathed the long sword in his hand with the Uchiha clan tattoo. The silver-white blade with a cold light instantly looked like a bright star falling from the sky, making it difficult for everyone to open their eyes and look directly at this light. Others didn't know, but Nangongja knew what such a scene represented. The edge of Sasuke's sword just now had an exclusive name, Sword Light. To Nangongja, who had cultivated inner strength, condensing the sword light was due to the sword intent of the Calamity Sword as well as his understanding of the way of the sword. And Sasuke actually succeeded in condensing sword light with his chakra, which wasn't that high. It was enough to see how amazing Sasuke was. However, chakra could only do this much. Unless there was a fortuitous encounter that surpassed common sense, it was almost impossible for him to evolve the sword light into sword chi like Nangongja and unleash a powerful strength like Nangongja. I saw it. Sasuke's voice came out of his mouth with an indifferent voice. His scarlet eyes were emitting endless coldness at the moment. I saw the unwillingness in your eyes for your own weakness. Since you are unwilling, then you have to face your own weakness bravely, instead of finding various reasons to cover up your weakness. This is the reason why I resolutely left Woodleaf. You want to know why I came to Orochimaru's side? I'll tell you with my sword. For some reason, after hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongja felt that it was the same as Naruto's previous words. Both of them were people who dared to face their own weakness, but the difference was that Naruto chose to accept his own weakness and admitted it frankly, while Sasuke chose to use all means to open up a thorny road in front of his weak self. Seeing that Sasuke had drawn his sword against his two close friends, Orochimaru couldn't sit still. Orochimaru had been condensing a huge amount of chakra in his body, but it wasn't for battle. After the battle with Naruto in Yonbi form, although it seemed that he kept his body in a complete state through molting again and again, this kind of technique didn't cost a lot. However, this kind of forbidden technique was not without consumption. His strength had already begun to drop to a very low value. If it was only Kakashi and Yamato here, Kakashi wouldn't mind joining forces with Sasuke to keep these two Woodleaf's high-end power here. But the moment Nangongja appeared, such thoughts completely disappeared. After all, unlike Kakashi and Yamato, Nangongja was a genuine Kage-level existence. He was someone who could wrestle with him in a complete state. Sasuke. Orochimaru looked at Sasuke, who was full of fighting spirit, and didn't know whether he understood Sasuke's real intention or not, but he said to Sasuke, "It's better not to get entangled with them here. Since Woodleaf can send Nangong-jun, then we can't guarantee that there won't be more powerful backup on the way, so let's withdraw for the time being." Sure enough. Hearing Orochimaru's words, Sasuke's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. Has Orochimaru really reached the point of exhaustion? The biggest reason why he didn't dare to attack Orochimaru before was because Sasuke was afraid that Orochimaru, who had endless means, was deliberately hiding his strength. But now Orochimaru actually used such a far-fetched and clumsy reason to retreat, which also proved to a certain extent that Orochimaru's combat power had fallen to a very high level at this moment. Humph! Sasuke put the long sword in his hand back into the scabbard, and the cold starlight disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. It seemed that he was dissatisfied with Orochimaru's cowardice and turned away. Seeing Sasuke's departure, Naruto wanted to step forward and say something, but he was directly stopped by Kakashi and Nangongja's double serious expressions. Naruto used the power of 9 tails before, so he was in a weakened state. At this moment, he was so anxious that his legs became soft and he fainted. Sasuke naturally heard the movement behind him, but at this moment, Sasuke absolutely couldn't show the slightest trace of his own emotions, but his hand holding the long sword became more and more powerful. Chapter 4:16. Sasuke. Where did Sasuke go? When the fainted Naruto slowly woke up under the dual effect of Sakura's medical ninjutsu and Nangongja's internal force, the first sentence he spoke was to ask about Sasuke's whereabouts. If it wasn't for the deep friendship between Naruto and Sasuke, perhaps anyone would think that Naruto was a little too obsessed with Sasuke's existence. He's gone. Looking at Naruto, Kakashi said slowly, he left with Orochimaru again. We didn't make him stay after all? Whether it was Kakashi or Sakura, they began to ask themselves. Sasuke, as their subordinate and teammate, didn't have the slightest bit of nostalgia for their existence. This really made Kakashi, who valued the bond between companions, and Sakura, who cared about Sasuke since childhood, feel very frustrated. I'm going to find him. Naruto heard Kakashi's words and tried to stand up with his hands on the ground. But the weakness of his body was far beyond his imagination. Naruto's body just propped up halfway and fell to the ground. Naruto's face was buried in the scorched soil on the ground. A face with scars was now covered with dust. But the most memorable thing was Naruto's eyes. The originally clear blue eyes were now full of crystal light. The tears in Naruto's eyes wrapped the dust on his face, leaving traces on his face. Naruto, who usually looked carefree, showed such a sad look at this moment. Naruto. Looking at Naruto's lost look, Nangongja, who watched him grow up, also felt very moved. If it wasn't for the fact that he revealed Sasuke's true feelings, Naruto would be more eager to find Sasuke. Perhaps Nangongja has already told the truth to Naruto. But now, it's not the time for Naruto to be depressed. You should have understood Sasuke's words just now, right? The reason why he left Woodleaf is that he thinks that staying in Woodleaf can't achieve his goals. Although this sentence is biased, it's not unreasonable to a certain extent. If you really want Sasuke to return to Woodleaf willingly, it's meaningless to just blindly pester him. Naruto heard Nangongja's words, and the depression in his eyes began to loosen a little. Uncle Nangong, what do you mean? Seeing that Naruto took his words to heart, Nangongja also nodded, as if to affirm Naruto's inner thoughts, and said to Naruto, yes. If you want to make a person understand that his decision is wrong, you shouldn't blindly plead and force him. You should use facts to tell him that his decision is decisively wrong. Woodleaf can't give birth to a real strong person? Then let yourself be an existence that can break his inference. A person who lived in a village like Woodleaf, who grew up in the same era as Sasuke, even if he didn't leave Woodleaf, even if he didn't abandon Woodleaf's guardian spirit and the will of fire, he can become a rare strong person. Isn't this way much better than your crying and despondent appearance right now? Nangongja has always been a teacher, father, and brother in Naruto's heart. In his childhood without a father, Nangongja also occupied the role of a father in Naruto's heart to a certain extent. Although as he grew older, Naruto has slowly hidden his dependence on Nangongja, such a feeling can't be hidden without traces. On the contrary, in the face of a difficult situation, those hidden feelings of wanting to find someone to rely on will become more and more intense. Now Nangongja is equivalent to providing Naruto, who lost the direction of his efforts, a seemingly bright and effective way. Why do people care so much about such a vague thing like hope? Because once there is something to rely on, then people will become extremely strong, and Naruto is the same. Now, although Naruto is still distressed by Sasuke's behavior, Naruto has begun to slowly walk out of the haze he set for himself. Kakashi looked at Nangongja, who was persuading Naruto, and didn't know why he thought of his father. Did his father also use such an unusually serious tone to express his inner care like Nangongja did to Naruto? The boy who was valued by his father has now grown to a point that even his father didn't expect. Uncle Nangong, don't worry, I will definitely let Sasuke know that the decision he made is not completely correct. But I also know that my strength is not enough. I will consult my father and lascivious sage after returning to the wood leaf. Naruto, who has never been able to accept Watergate, directly called him father at this moment. Nangongja didn't know why, but it must be a good thing. After all, Nangongja was very happy to be able to witness the family go from being separated to the ends of the earth. Sasai, who has been standing on the side like a bystander, also looked at the way Naruto and Nangongja get along. He couldn't help but think of his brother who gave up his life so that he could live. Maybe this is family? Sasai didn't quite understand. After all, under Danzo's deliberate teaching, Sasai's emotions have become extremely weak. However, at this moment, Sai Jingjue really wanted to know. If his elder brother could really survive until now, would he be able to give him an answer when he was at a loss? Would he be able to rely on him when he was helpless? Although all of this couldn't be verified, Sasai couldn't help but give a positive answer for his brother in his heart. Although there were some gains in this operation, it could be judged as a failure. After all, most of the information collected was about Sasuke, and Sasuke himself had passed away. Even if there was this information, it couldn't immediately provide effective help to the wood leaf. But no one was immersed in the sadness of the mission not being so successful. Nangongja's words also entered Sakura's ears, so Sakura looked full of fighting spirit at this moment. Kakashi was immersed in his memories, Sasai was slightly envious, and Yamato's dull face didn't look like they had experienced failure at all. Instead, they seemed to have gained more. Chapter 4:17. After this matter, Kakashi's group of 5, as well as Nangongja, returned to Woodleaf Village. Nangongja didn't want to have too much contact with Watergate. After all, the two of them were only allies based on interests. Even if there were some emotional ties, after all, Watergate represented Woodleaf Village, while Nangongja was the leader of Bloodcloth Pavilion. The difference in status made it impossible for the two of them to have a close relationship. Therefore, only Kakashi's group of 5 came to the Hokage's office. Kakashi didn't hide anything from Nangongja's sudden appearance. After all, although Nangongja appeared abruptly, he helped them solve the threat from Orochimaru. And Nangongja has his own set of intelligence systems and forces. In fact, Konoha also knows about such things, but for the time being, there is no way to accurately link Nangongja with the increasingly prosperous Bloodcloak Pavilion in the shinobi world. Well, I understand the situation you said. After listening to Kakashi's report, Watergate also nodded and said to Kakashi, although this operation is not a success, it can be said that there are some gains. The appearance of Orochimaru has indeed disrupted our original plan to find out more information about Orochimaru from the Akatsuki spies, but Orochimaru's appearance and all kinds of performance do have a certain value, so I have decided to consider this mission as a downgrade. The original S-level mission will be downgraded to A-level, and the mission reward will be divided according to the A-level mission. Strictly speaking, this mission was indeed a failure, but there were too many irreversible factors. Kabuto believed that the betrayal of Akatsuki and the sudden appearance of Orochimaru were uncontrollable circumstances, and the fault was not with Kakashi and the others, so Watergate still generously believed that Kakashi's mission was partially successful. More importantly, Orochimaru's escape without a fight and Uchiha Sasuke's attitude towards Orochimaru were extremely important information, enough for the Woodleaf village staff to extract a lot of useful information, and Watergate could also find some clues from it. The master is weak and the guest is strong, plus Sasuke's own temperament of not wanting to submit to others, and he can predict what may happen next. But Watergate couldn't tell these things to Naruto, Sakura, and even Kakashi, Sasuke's original teammates and mentors. After all, there was still a deep relationship between them. Watergate gently raised his hand, as if preparing to comfort Kakashi and the others, and then announced the necessary rest arrangements after the mission. But Naruto suddenly opened his mouth and said to Watergate, "Father, I hope you can help me become stronger." Hearing Naruto's address, Watergate's heart was also in a trance. Watergate had always hoped that Naruto could accept him like this, instead of being awkward like a child, so Watergate, who was about to let Kakashi and the others retreat, also stopped his action and said to Naruto with a serious face, "Naruto, I know that you met Sasuke directly this time, and once again, you didn't let Sasuke and you returned to Woodleaf as you wished. This matter made you very sad, and caused a lot of emotional fluctuations. But I hope that you can correct your heart, and don't let your inner urgency affect your thinking." Watergate naturally also knows Naruto, and for Naruto's mood at the moment, Watergate also feels that he knows a little about it. As a human, column force is extremely susceptible to the side effects of chakra, which disturbs thinking. This is also the reason why the average column force's character is a bit extreme and strange. Watergate doesn't want his child to be affected by these side effects, and indulge in negative emotions, and then go astray, so Watergate said these words to Naruto with an unusually serious expression at the moment. After hearing Watergate's words, Naruto didn't act as impatient and angry as Watergate's impression. Instead, he showed a very different calm attitude and said to Watergate, "I know what you mean, father. You can rest assured that I will use my actions to prove that Sasuke's actions are one-sided and excessive. Nangong-san has already told me a lot at the time, and I also think that what Uncle Nangong said is very reasonable. Instead of blindly entangling and persisting in bringing Sasuke back to Woodleaf, it's better to use facts to prove that Sasuke's decision is not as correct as he imagined. So, I'm very calm at the moment, and I hope that father can help me make greater progress." Hearing Naruto's words, Watergate glanced at Kakashi standing on the side with a slightly reproachful look. After all, just now Kakashi was routinely reporting the process of the task, such as what Nangongja said to Naruto. Kakashi thought that it had little to do with the task, so for the time being, he was going to find another time to talk about it with Watergate. Of course, Watergate is not a narrow-minded person, and soon Watergate understood why Kakashi didn't describe what Nangongja said. Because Naruto has almost completely repeated what Nangongja said to him at the time, some of which are not so suitable to say in front of Watergate, who can represent Woodleaf. But the person who spoke is a strong person in the ninja world, and the person who repeated these words is his own child. Even if Watergate was unhappy with Nangongja's views on Woodleaf's education model and the way of survival, Watergate still maintained a calm face. And Watergate is indeed considering transforming Rasengan into a chakra that is more suitable for Naruto, which is extremely abundant, and can output a lot of chakra ninjutsu that ordinary ninja can't release. But it involves a lot of profound concepts of chakra's transformation and qualitative change, which can't be explained clearly in a short time. So Watergate still waved his hand and said to Kakashi and the others, "This is the end of this matter, you will enjoy a month's vacation, I hope you can have a good rest and exercise yourself. Don't waste time, but make yourself better day by day." Standing on the side, Naruto saw that Watergate hasn't answered his request, and his pair of eyes slightly dimmed at this moment, but then Watergate's words pulled Naruto's mood back to the bottom. "Naruto, after going home, get ready to practice with me. My training is very terrible, so get ready." With that, Watergate even walked to Naruto's side and patted his child's shoulder with encouragement. Chapter 418. In one of Orochimaru's secret bases, Sasuke was standing in a slightly empty training ground. The surrounding ground had a little bit of scorch marks, as if a strong electric current had just raged from above. Around Sasuke were some obviously damaged shurikens, kunai, and other weapons. Sasuke just started to train his newly developed ninjutsu here, the ninjutsu called Chidori Ryu, that combines the nature and shape changes of Raiton chakra. Chidori Ryu itself is a combination of attack and defense. It can be attached to his body to resist the enemy's attack. On the other hand, it can also be transformed into a plasticized spear, long sword, and various hidden weapons for long-range or melee attacks. But Sasuke still felt that it was not enough. Just relying on such a ninjutsu, although it had some novelty, but its power was not so beyond imagination, it was not the only way for Sasuke to defeat Orochimaru. Sasuke hoped that he could have a ninjutsu that could be used as a trump card. This is why Sasuke was still very dissatisfied with his training results even though he was panting now. Just when Sasuke was annoyed that his attack method was not as powerful as he expected, Sasuke's mind suddenly remembered the scene that shocked his soul before. A black lion with a golden mane was wrapped in black thunder, like a mythological beast patrolling the world, walking across the sky. If he could use his Raiton chakra to such an extent, would he be able to make such a move with such a great power? The inspiration that was originally hidden in his heart for various reasons was once again dug out by Sasuke. Could he artificially create such a giant beast to attack through his manipulation of chakra? Sasuke began to slowly condense the Raiton chakra in his body into his hand, and lightning wrapped around Sasuke's hand. Using chakra, he slowly controlled the lightning arcs that jumped on his hand, and a small lightning condensed thing that looked quite similar to Ryo began to slowly appear in Sasuke's hand. Sasuke tried to make this small thunder beast jump in his palm, and he also looked at the small thunder beast in his palm with great interest. However, things didn't always go so smoothly. The moment the little beast jumped up, the lightning power contained within it instantly went berserk. The little beast, which seemed to be quite lively at first, had turned into electric currents and disappeared into the air. However, there was no sign of discouragement on Sasuke's face. Instead, he became more and more excited. After all, this was only his first attempt. Being able to successfully condense Thunder Beast was already a success. As long as he can complete this ninjutsu, then he will have the capital to break away from Orochimaru's control, and he will also have the qualification to fight with his brother. For Sasuke, the temptation can be imagined. Naruto, at this moment, also left the Woodleaf village with Watergate and went to a small town with a waterfall a little far from the Woodleaf village to practice. God knows how Minato managed to push away all the troublesome things that he should have shouldered as the Hokage, and even left Konoha alone with his child. Naruto, chakra is not only a source of power for you to use ninjutsu, but also a deeper power that is worth exploring. That is, the control of chakra's transformation and qualitative change. As a ninja, if you want to make progress in your strength, slowly accumulating chakra is naturally the most basic way. But increasing the power of your ninjutsu is also a path that you can choose. So today, I will develop the transformation of Rasengan with you and create an unprecedented ninjutsu. When Watergate said that he wanted to create an unprecedented ninjutsu, the light in his eyes was so bright. Even as a child of Watergate, Naruto saw Watergate's eyes bloom with such pure and shining light for the first time. Perhaps at this moment, Watergate, who has shed his identity as Hokage, is showing his true self. After all, Watergate's talent in ninjutsu is beyond doubt. He can learn the Flying Thunder God Jutsu left by Nidaime Hokage, and can create an unprecedented ninjutsu like Rasengan. How can Watergate not be a person who really loves to study ninjutsu? But when Minato was pushed to the position of Hokage, how much time would he have to study the ninjutsu that he was obsessed with? No one can understand Watergate's mood, but it's not impossible to taste it. And when Naruto saw Watergate's eyes shining at the moment, and after Watergate lost his always deliberately serious look, he didn't know why he felt that his father, who is called Yondaime Hokage, was also a pitiful person. Well, let's create an unprecedented ninjutsu together. For some reason, Naruto couldn't help but respond to Watergate. Watergate, who had been thinking that he was just talking to himself, suddenly heard Naruto's response, and looked at Naruto with wide eyes. With a sunny smile on his handsome face, Naruto suddenly remembered that when he was young, his mother, Shina Kushina, always said to him that his father's smile was like the sun in the sky. Walking with Naruto on a long path, through large and small forests, a very noisy sound came into the ears of Watergate and Naruto. "This is..." With a little doubt, Naruto asked Watergate. Watergate just smiled and took Naruto's hand, and took him through the last forest, and everything in front of him suddenly became clear. A huge waterfall appeared in front of Naruto, and the noisy and roaring sound obviously came from here. What kind of training can actually use such a huge waterfall with a span of nearly 10 meters from left to right and nearly 12 meters from top to bottom? Watergate didn't explain too much to Naruto. Instead, he picked a leaf from a bush beside him and put it in Naruto's hand. Chapter 419. Emerald Water Altar has sent an urgent report. Akatsuki is making a move again. In the courtyard of Mashiro's residence, a blood cloth pavilion disciple wearing casual clothes suddenly appeared beside Mashiro. He half knelt in front of Mashiro and took out a sealed scroll from his hands. Lowering his head, this blood cloth pavilion disciple respectfully said to Mashiro. After receiving the scroll and checking whether the seal was intact, Mashiro nodded and signaled the disciple to withdraw for the time being. Mashiro took the scroll and walked towards his house. Pushing open the door of the corridor, Mashiro walked into the house. Walking straight towards the kitchen, the familiar smell of cooking oil rushed into Mashiro's nose. It was noon. Nangongja was naturally in the kitchen cooking lunch for his family. Slowly walking behind Nangongja, watching Nangongja skillfully stir-frying the iron pot in his hand, Mashiro was reluctant to break this seemingly ordinary scene. In this world, although there were both male and female ninjas, there were still more strong male ninjas. Even if gender discrimination was not explicitly stated, it would always exist. As a rare strong ninja, Nangongja was willing to put down his identity to personally buy vegetables, cook, and take care of the daily life of his family. If this matter was spread to the outside world, who knows how many people would be surprised. So although Mashiro knew that this information was very important, he was reluctant to disturb Nangongja at this moment. Placing the iron pot in his hand on the stove, Nangongja skillfully turned off the stove fire, then took a plate beside him and poured the ingredients in the iron pot into the plate. Then Nangongja seemed to be slow to notice that Mashiro was already standing behind him. With a doting expression, Nangongja softly asked Mashiro. "What's the matter, are you hungry? The rice is ready, the food is also out of the pot, why don't you help me call Little Linger and row over, we can eat now." Mashiro naturally understood Nangongja's meaning. The scroll in his hand marked with the urgent sign was very conspicuous, but Nangongja ignored it and asked him to invite Little Linger and Nangongro to eat. Naturally, he didn't intend to sacrifice the time to eat with his family to read this information. After placing the scroll in his hand on the wooden shelf, Mashiro walked to Nangongja's side and scooped out a portion of rice. A few dishes were quickly arranged by Nangongja and Mashiro and were quickly placed on the dining table. At this moment, Mashiro washed his hands in the kitchen and used a clean towel to dry his hands. He then walked to Nangongro and Little Linger's rooms and called them out. An ordinary lunch ended in such an ordinary atmosphere. After casually chatting with his sister and Little Linger and Nangongro also went to do their own things. Mashiro then placed the scroll in front of Nangongja. Nangongja casually took the scroll and broke the seal on the scroll. He also slowly injected his internal force into the scroll and opened a few hidden nodes of the self-destruct formation. This scroll marked with the urgent sign was then opened by Mashiro. After reading the words written in the scroll in his hand one by one, Nangongja's expression was still as usual, as if the content of the scroll wasn't that important. Mashiro stood beside Nangongja. Although he didn't say anything, it was obvious that he was very concerned about the information recorded in the scroll. However, Nangongja still handed the scroll marked with the urgent sign to Mashiro. It seems that there are still some problems with our inference. I thought that the Akatsuki would capture column force because it was too difficult and they sacrificed too many of their own members. However, I didn't expect that the Akatsuki's target this time was actually the Cloud Hidden Village's second-last column force Yujito Nihito. Column force, a person who could perfectly master the power of the second last, seemed to be captured under the joint attack of two members of the Akatsuki. This was really unexpected. However, it was nothing. After all, among the nine-tailed beasts, the strength of the Nibi and the Ichibi wasn't far apart. If the Ichibi couldn't resist, then it was only a matter of time before the Nibi was easily captured. Now, not only the Sunagakure lost their tailed beasts, but even the Cloud Hidden Village lost their tailed beasts. This situation must have awakened many people who can see the current situation clearly, so it will only become more and more difficult for the Akatsuki to capture the tailed beasts, and the sacrifices will be more and more. Even if all the nine-tailed beasts are in their arms, once all the members of the Akatsuki fall, what can they protect with such strength? In fact, Nangongja still had a certain optimistic attitude towards the Akatsuki. Although the strength of the Akatsuki is obvious to all, the lack of foundation has always been the shortcoming of the Akatsuki. Once such an organization's high-end strength falls, it can only become a beach that will eventually be submerged in the flood of ninja formed by the major ninja villages of the ninja world. Originally, looking at the unexpected behavior of the Akatsuki mentioned in the scroll that the Akatsuki unexpectedly kidnapped the Cloud Hidden Village's second last, Mashiro was a little panicked. After all, the Akatsuki's behavior was really difficult for Mashiro to understand, but Nangongja's explanation does make some sense. Although Mashiro was still worried, he was also in a state of fear. Then, should we pass this information to the Hokage? Mashiro looked at the information in his hand and tried to ask Nangongja. Passing the information to the Hokage is naturally like driving the tiger to swallow the wolf, and let Watergate, the Woodleaf Hokage who has a deep hatred for the Akatsuki, collide with the Akatsuki. Such a strategy is an obvious one, and Watergate has no choice but to collide with it. However, Nangongja didn't agree with Mashiro's idea. Instead, he shook his head and said to Mashiro, "I know what you mean, but this approach is useless. Everyone who can climb to a high position with their own strength is brave, but everyone who can sit in a high position for a long time is wise. Minato is a cold and wise man who can completely suppress his feelings in the face of things. Such a person can't be manipulated through personal feelings." Chapter 420. At this moment, Watergate, who Nangongja called the Cold Wise Man, was training with his son near a waterfall outside of Woodleaf Village. Under Watergate's guidance of using the shadow clone technique, Naruto became more and more familiar with the nature of chakra. After cutting the leaves and using the wind derived from chakra to temporarily stop the flow of the waterfall, even Naruto, who didn't control chakra that well, could clearly feel his progress. Standing on the side, Minato, who had been paying attention to Naruto's progress with some joy on his face, suddenly froze. Taking a few steps forward, Kuroto condensed his chakra at his throat, and in this way, amplified his voice. The sound of the water gate was even louder than the roar of the falling waterfall. "Naruto, let's temporarily stop training." Hearing Watergate's voice, Naruto also reacted. Under the waterfall, a row of naked Naruto clones formed hand seals in unison. Standing in the middle, Naruto's main body, the shadow clones all disappeared and turned into a pile of smoke. When using the shadow clone technique, the fatigue and memories of the shadow clone would return to the main body. Usually, after training, Naruto would uncontrollably fall asleep, and then he would quickly recover under the influence of the Nine Tails chakra in his body. This training didn't last long, so even if he endured the fatigue of his shadow clone technique, Naruto could still withstand the impact. Shaking his head slightly, Naruto expelled the water droplets on his hair and the dizziness in his mind. He slowly walked to Watergate's side. "Dad, what's wrong? Did something go wrong during the training?" In just a few days, the relationship between Naruto and Watergate seemed to have improved by leaps and bounds. Naruto had quietly changed the way he addressed his father from a respectful father to a very intimate dad. Watergate smiled at Naruto. Every time he heard Naruto call him that, the joy from the heart would make Watergate smile. But this time, after a short smile, Watergate's expression became serious again. Nangong's title of Cold Wise Man was indeed true. "Something happened in Woodleaf that my shadow clone technique couldn't deal with. I need to go back and deal with it. Your training is already on the right track, as long as you can train yourself to the point where you can cut off the waterfall with your wind chakra or even reverse the flow of the waterfall, the ninjutsu we created together will be completed. Come on, Dad believes that you can do it." He put his hand on Naruto's shoulder, as if he was trying his best to make up for the regret of not being able to see Naruto's progress. As a son, Naruto naturally hopes that his father can see his every progress. But Watergate is not only his father, he is also the Hokage of Woodleaf. Usually, he can only see the side of Watergate as Hokage. These days, he can see the side of Watergate as a father, which makes Naruto very happy. Resisting the reluctance in his heart, Naruto nodded to Watergate and said, "I know, it's okay. Dad, you are not only my father, but also the Hokage that every villager in Woodleaf Village looks up to. It was normal to do one's duty well. I, at the beginning, now, and in the future, will always have Hokage as my goal. I also want to be Hokage. What can make a father happier than his own child wanting to be like him?" Watergate looked at Naruto standing in front of him, and fiercely hugged his child in his arms. With indescribable relief, he said to Naruto, "Then continue to work hard. I believe that my Naruto will become an excellent Hokage." Looking up, Naruto looked at Watergate's face, and nodded. He nodded very seriously. Watergate also nodded to Naruto with a face full of relief, and his figure suddenly disappeared, apparently using the Flying Thunder God jutsu to leave. Looking at the empty arms of his father, Naruto hugged the air as if his father was still hugging him. Then with a serious and firm face, he walked towards the huge waterfall again. In the Hokage's office, Watergate's figure suddenly appeared in his seat. The Hokage's office was full of people at the moment: Woodleaf Chief of Staff Nara Shikaku, Team 10 Instructor Yuan Fei Asuma, and his subordinates were all standing in the Hokage's office, and the most eye-catching one was a monk who had shed his worries. This monk was the abbot of the Fire Temple, and along with Yuan Fei Asuma, he was a member of the 12 Guardian Ninjas. But this abbot, who should be in the Fire Temple, at this moment, seemed to be standing in the Hokage's office with a serious injury. So, you can already determine that the ninjas who attacked the Fire Temple were the official members of the Akatsuki? Watergate apparently got the necessary information from the memory of his shadow clone. In order to confirm the accuracy of the information, Watergate once again asked Nara Shikaku. "The situation is true, and just now, we have confirmed the identity of the two ninjas who attacked the Fire Temple from the mission records. One of them was the traitor Kakuzu of the Waterfall Village who escaped from the hands of the first Hokage Senju Takuma, who was known as the God of Shinobi, and the other one was the traitor ninja of the Hot Spring Village, Nangongja, who fought against our Woodleaf ninja, Haiden." Hearing Shikaku's words, Watergate's eyes were also very serious. Few people can accurately judge the strength of Senju Takuma, but Senju Takuma can be called a god. Naturally, he has the strength to match such a title. As for Nangongja's strength, it was needless to say. Back then, he had not fully matured yet, but he was already able to take on the nine-tailed beast head-on. Over the years, Nangongja's strength had been increasing rapidly, and it was already an unimaginable mystery. In any case, the real goal of these two people is not the Fire Temple. The Fire Temple is just an existence they destroyed in exchange for a commission. Their real goal is Woodleaf Village. With a little pain, Nara Shikaku said to everyone present. Chapter 421. When talking about the scene of that day, Chiriku could still remember the despair of many disciples of the Fire Temple at that time. What kind of ninjas were those two? Their attack wasn't so earth-shattering, and as the head of the Fire Temple, Chiriku could be said to be a knowledgeable person. It's not that Chiriku hasn't seen existences more powerful than Kakuzu and Haiden, but Kakuzu and Haiden's fighting style really made everyone's heart palpitate. As the saying goes, the weak are afraid of the strong are afraid of the tyrannical, and the tyrannical are afraid of those who don't care about their lives. The battle between Kakuzu and Haiden can be said to be a battle where they didn't care about their lives to the extreme. Even if they were hit, they would still make a shallow cut on their opponent's body. If it was an ordinary ninja who didn't care about their lives, the Fire Temple could completely rely on its many disciples to kill such a character. But Kakuzu and Haiden didn't seem to have the slightest relationship with death. Even if their hands and feet were cut off, even if their hearts were pierced, these two guys were still alive and kicking, carrying out a bloody massacre in the Fire Temple. Recalling the scene at that time, the more Chiriku thought about it, the more he felt that he was able to smoothly escape from the Fire Temple, not only because the disciples of the Fire Temple risked their lives to protect him, but also because Kakuzu and Haiden deliberately let him go to the Woodleaf Village. Given how arrogantly the two of them discussed their battle plans and goals in front of him, it wasn't like these two lunatics wouldn't do such a thing. When the two people of Akatsuki organization were in the Fire Temple, they seemed to be showing off their battle plan to me. I don't know whether they are deliberately deceiving us, but I think it's necessary to remind you. Akatsuki's goal is the 9 tails in the Woodleaf Village. Please be prepared, don't let these two bastards succeed. The tragedy of the Fire Temple was still vivid in his mind, although Chiriku believed that the strength of the Woodleaf Village must be higher than the Fire Temple, but the combination of Kakuzu and Haiden was too strange and terrible. Chiriku didn't want the Woodleaf Village to suffer a huge loss because of carelessness and underestimation of the enemy. Hokage-sama. Looking at Watergate, who was sitting in his seat without saying a word, Asuma put the cigarette in his mouth back into his cigarette box, and with a bit of anger, he said to Watergate. The Fire Temple is the national temple of the Land of Fire. To a certain extent, it also represents the face of the Land of Fire. But now the symbol of the Land 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 of Fire, our Woodleaf Village has an obligation that can't be shirked. Kakuzu and Haiden and Kakuzu of the Land of the Land of the Land of Fire Temple. First, it is to let the world know that our Woodleaf Village is a force that puts the face of the Land of Fire in our heart. Second, we can also protect our village's 9 tails column force who hasn't fully grown yet. When he heard Asuma's mouth saying the harsh name, 9 tails column force, Watergate slightly wrinkled his brows. Naruto is indeed the 9 tails column force, but Naruto is also his child. Being called by such a term, Watergate is actually very uncomfortable in his heart. You know, whether it is Shina Kushina or Naruto, both were once or are still the 9 tails column force. But Watergate can't get angry now, because Asuma's identity is too important. The current head of the Yuan Fei clan, the son of the 3 generations Hokage, he is not an existence that Watergate can mess with at will. Therefore, Minato could only suppress the unhappiness in his heart. He slowly exhaled the turbid air in his mouth and said, "Don't worry about it. The Fire Temple was destroyed in such a way. Konoha's ninja village indeed has an unshirkable obligation. I know Asuma's obligations and responsibilities as the 12 guardian warriors of the Land of Fire, but as Chiriku said just now, we can't underestimate the enemy, otherwise, we will inevitably be harmed. We still need to specify a more complete strategy, and then we can take action." Hearing Watergate's words, Shikaku Nara, as the chief of staff of the Woodleaf Ninja Village, and Shikamaru Nara, Asuma's subordinate, also nodded to express their agreement. The father and son from the Nara clan are wise men, both of them have the temperament of planning before acting, so Watergate's proposal is more in line with their wishes. Even Chiriku, the leader of the destroyed Fire Temple, actually agreed with Watergate's statement in his heart. Asuma naturally has no malice, but such recklessness will definitely cause him to suffer. As a close friend of Asuma, Chiriku doesn't want to see Asuma suffer any big losses. Everything is up to Hokage-sama, the blood of the disciples of the Fire Temple can't be shed in vain. But the dead can't be brought back to life, although we will have memories of the people who have passed away, we can't let our inner emotions get to our heads. They are just a different form of life, watching everything in time. With that, Chiriku put his hands together and chanted Buddha's name in his mouth. Being able to become the leader of the Fire Temple, Chiriku's own Buddhist cultivation is naturally obvious to all. When it came to life and death, Buddhists naturally had a more thorough view. Asuma looked at Chiriku, who was chanting Buddhist scriptures in a low voice with his hands together, and for a while, he didn't know what to say. Shikaku, you said before that one of the two Akatsuki ninjas who attacked the Fire Temple, the one named Haiden, once fought with Nangongja of the Woodleaf Ninja Village? Ignoring the state of Chiriku and Asuma, Watergate began to ask some very useful information that Shikaku said before. How shrewd is Shikaku Nara? Naturally, he understood that Watergate didn't want to entangle with such a reckless person like Asuma and Chiriku for too long. To put it bluntly, although the Woodleaf Ninja Village and the Land of Fire are interdependent, and nominally have a subordinate relationship, but it's not so difficult to separate. Woodleaf Ninja Village itself is a relatively independent existence, and being able to preserve its strength is the most important thing for Woodleaf Ninja Village. Indeed, we can be sure that Nangong Jonin has fought with Haiden. We don't know much about Haiden, but Nangong Jonin who fought with Haiden personally must know more information that we don't know and what we should pay attention to. Chapter 422. In fact, it wasn't just Nangongja who didn't want to have too many entanglements with Watergate. Watergate himself didn't want to have too many entanglements with Nangongja. The relationship between the two was like this: every time he asked the other party to help him, he had to pay a certain price. This way of getting along with each other was destined to make Nangongja think that Watergate and Nangongja have no possibility of cooperation. Just when Watergate was still thinking about whether to pay a certain price to get some information about Haiden from Nangongja, or even directly ask Haiden and Asuma squad to eliminate Haiden and Kakuzu, a knock on the door sounded. Hokage-sama, Nangong Shinobi requests to see you. The voice of the ninja guarding the Hokage office building sounded, and Minato was also surprised to hear the news of Nangongja's arrival. To be honest, for Watergate, this wasn't good news, because Watergate didn't believe that Nangongja came here just to say hello. There must be something. Nangongja rarely came to the Hokage's office to look for him. Invite Nangong Shinobi in. Watergate didn't hesitate and directly said to the door. After a while, the door was opened, Nangongja stood at the door, and the guard respectfully invited Nangongja into the Hokage's office. Nangongja didn't have any pretentious posture, and directly strode into the Hokage's office. Although the Hokage's office was full of people, Nangongja looked around and found that there was only one unfamiliar face, so he looked at Watergate with a bit of a questioning look, as if to ask Watergate whether he should say what he wanted to say to Watergate or wait for a while. What's the matter? Just say it. Shikaku Nara is the chief of staff of the Woodleaf Ninja Village, Asuma is the son of the 3 generations Hokage and the current head of the Yuan Fei clan, and the new Pig Shikaku trio are the hardcore supporters of the Hokage clan, and Hikari is the head of the Fire Temple. Watergate has the due trust and respect of these people, so Watergate doesn't mind what Nangongja said here. There is a certain tacit understanding between Watergate and Nangongja. I have received an urgent report that Column Force of the Cloud Village was kidnapped not long ago, and her whereabouts is unknown. Through some on-site investigations, a black chakra product similar to silk threads was found. After some judgment, it should be a secret technique called Earth's Grudge. In the ninja world, the only person who can use this secret jutsu is Kakuzu, who betrayed the Waterfall Village decades ago. Listening to Nangongja's words, everyone in the Hokage's office at this moment changed their expressions. Haiden and Kakuzu actually attacked the Land of Lightning before attacking the Land of Fire, and even directly kidnapped the Cloud Village's Nibi Column Force. Watergate and Shikaku Nara are very clear about what happened to Column Force when he fell into the hands of the Akatsuki. Previously, Watergate also gave Nangong's analysis of the Akatsuki's actions to Shikaku Nara. After Shikaku Nara's analysis, he also felt that the speculation given by Nangongja was completely reasonable, but he didn't expect that the Akatsuki would attack Column Force, who was under the protection of the ninja village. However, Watergate, who has been in a high position for many years, quickly adjusted his state of mind. As a person in a high position, he doesn't allow himself to reveal his true thoughts to anyone. So at this moment, Watergate looked at Nangongja calmly and said to Nangongja, "We can confirm that the partner of this defected ninja named Kakuzu is a ninja named Haiden, who you defeated before. The National Temple of the Land of Fire was directly destroyed by Haiden and Kakuzu before. Master Kuroku also tried his best to come to the Woodleaf and inform us that these two people are moving in the direction of the Woodleaf Ninja Village. I originally wanted to ask you to come over and learn about Haiden's information, but I didn't expect you to come and tell me such news." When talking to Mashiro before, Nangongja was ready to keep such information in his hands and not give it to Watergate. After all, the person who was captured is Column Force from the Cloud Village, and such a thing is still too far away from the Woodleaf, so he didn't feel any sense of urgency. But not long ago, Nangongja received news about Master Kuroku entering the Woodleaf Ninja Village. After some investigation, Nangongja naturally learned about the accident that happened in the Fire Temple. Although it was a little delayed, Nangongja's idea of pouring a little more oil on Watergate's fire. As a person who has been with Naruto for a long time, Nangongja naturally knows that once Watergate can put away all his distracting thoughts and get along with his child for a while, the relationship between Watergate and Naruto will definitely warm up rapidly. As Column Force, Naruto is naturally threatened by the Akatsuki. When he heard the news that the members of the Akatsuki attacked the Fire Temple and headed towards the Woodleaf Ninja Village, plus the news that the Cloud Village's Nibi Column Force was captured, Nangongja was quite excited to see how Watergate, who was regarded as a father rather than a ninja, would behave. Although Watergate at this moment seems to be deliberately showing his calmness, Nangongja has clearly noticed that Watergate's breathing has become a little rapid, and his originally clear eyes have quietly spread a few strands of red blood, not to mention the accelerated heartbeat and accelerated blood circulation. Being able to break Watergate's almost calm state of mind and make him show such an interesting side in front of him, Nangongja's hidden bad taste in his heart seems to have been inexplicably satisfied for a while. But this kind of mood is still good for him, he still can't show it, so Nangongja also began to tell Watergate some of his judgments about Haiden's ability. Hearing Nangongja's words about Haiden's slightly bizarre ability from the Jutsuki Society, Shikaku and Shikamaru's eyebrows slowly frowned together. These two people with superior intelligence have begun to secretly analyze the strengths and weaknesses of Haiden's ability, and may even have begun to formulate a battle plan. Nangongja didn't intend to fight with Haiden and Kakuzu together with Asuma. After all, such a thing doesn't need to send a ninja with such strength. Although Kakuzu and Haiden's abilities are strange, they also have their own shortcomings. As long as they seize the opportunity, defeating these two people is not a difficult goal to achieve. Chapter 423. After Nangongja finished telling all the information he knew to Watergate, he didn't stay any longer and directly left the Hokage's office. Watergate, who thought that he would have to pay some price, saw Nangongja leave so quickly, he didn't react for a while. But for Nangongja, being able to see Watergate's different state from the past, satisfying a little bit of bad taste in his heart, it was worth the ticket price. Turning every piece of information and every conversation into a business deal again and again, for Nangongja, it's actually not interesting, right? After leaving the Hokage's office, Nangongja slowly walked on the street of Woodleaf Ninja Village, looking at the people coming and going. These people were in a hurry to live their lives, but no matter how tired they were, everyone seemed to be full of hope and expectations for the future. Nangongja couldn't help but feel that such a peaceful scene was really unbearable to destroy. Maybe this is the reason why Woodleaf Ninja Village's Hokage came one after another, for the sake of Woodleaf's future, one after another. Originally, Nangongja wanted to slowly recall the scene of Watergate's gaffe on the way home, but in such an environment, his complex mood, which was originally satisfied by his bad taste, slowly settled down. As his mood calmed down, Nangongja's thoughts also returned to his usual calm and rational mind. The information he got about Kakuzu, Haiden, and the attacked fire temple also reappeared in Nangongja's mind, and was carefully analyzed by Nangongja. As his footsteps became slower and slower, Nangongja's eyebrows also slowly wrinkled together. Something is wrong. Obviously, things are so clear, but why does Nangongja still feel that something is wrong? Nangongja can't say that he knows Haiden very well, but after meeting and fighting so many times, Nangongja knows that Haiden is actually a madman who is completely immersed in the evil belief of Jadism. All his actions are done as he pleases, or it can be said that he does it to promote Jadism. So, can it be said that the two people group, Kakuzu and Haiden, are actually mainly relying on Kakuzu to guide the direction? Otherwise, with just Haiden alone, not to mention completing the task given by the Akatsuki, it's estimated that he would be nowhere to be found after leaving the Akatsuki's door. In this case, what kind of person is Kakuzu, who is responsible for the direction of the two group? Although Kakuzu has been doing things carefully for so many years, his temperament has been recorded in the ninja's world. This was a person who could be considered steady and good at thinking, but was easily immersed in killing. Would such a person purposely let Di-Lu go, and even reveal his own plan of action? The more he thought about it, the more Nangongja felt that something is wrong. Whether it's Chiriku escaping from the hands of Haiden and Kakuzu, or the Akatsuki's rapid speed to capture the cloud-hidden village's Nibi made Nangongja feel that everything is full of planning. Speeding up his pace, Nangongja quickly walked in the direction of his home. Nangongja felt that he needs to contact the disciples of Clearwater Altar as much as possible to verify his conjecture. In the huge courtyard belonging to the patriarch of the Yuan Fei clan, Asuma was holding his flying swallow and gently wiping it in his hand. It seems that when wiping his weapon, his heart can be temporarily calm. Chiriku, who escaped from the fire temple, was also brought back to his home by Asuma. After all, Chiriku can be said to have no one to rely on in the Woodleaf village. As a close friend of Chiriku, Asuma was also very generous to bring Chiriku to his home for the time being. When everything is ready, Asuma, Chiriku, and the new pig deer butterfly team will set off together to stop the attack of Haiden and Kakuzu. Kurenai, who has already married Asuma, was also sitting in the living room at this moment to entertain Chiriku. The two seemed to be chatting casually. Gradually, Kurenai's eyes also had a slight smile, and one of her hands gently stroked her lower abdomen. After wiping his weapon, Asuma also put away his flying swallow and walked to the living room of his home. Seeing Kurenai and Di-Lu chatting happily, Asuma quietly sat down beside Kurenai. He took out a cigarette from his cigarette box and was about to light it up when he said to Kurenai and Kurenai, "Don't worry. What are you talking about? Why are you so happy?" Seeing that Asuma was about to smoke, Kurenai, who was already a little disgusted, directly snatched the cigarette from Asuma's hand and looked at Asuma with an unhappy face. Although Kurenai doesn't like him to smoke, she won't directly take his cigarette from him. This time, she actually took his cigarette away in front of his friend, which made Asuma a little confused. Chiriku, who was sitting on the side, also looked at the action between Asuma and Kurenai with a smile on his face. The originally sad expression in his eyes was now somewhat diluted by an inexplicable joy. Chiriku opened his mouth and said to Asuma, "Asuma, you really shouldn't smoke at home. It's better if you quit smoking. This is not only good for yourself, but also good for Kurenai and the other little life." Hearing his friend's words, Asuma couldn't react for a while. Chiriku, look at you, how many times have I told you, I'm not a monk, I don't understand the meaning in your words. Wait, little life. Asuma, who was just about to ridicule his friend, instantly stopped the words in his mouth. He stared at his wife sitting next to him with a pair of bull-like eyes. Kurenai was also amused by Asuma's appearance. She gently stretched out her slender palm and patted her husband's forehead, then said to Asuma, I told you before that I didn't feel very comfortable, did you forget? You also said that you would take me to Kiba Hospital for a checkup in a few days. But you are indeed a little busy these few days. When I was chatting with Master Chiriku just now, Master Chiriku said that he is also quite good at medical skills, so he helped me feel my pulse. The result was that, it's a pregnancy pulse. In the end, even the usually valiant Kurenai's face was covered with a layer of blush. After listening to Kurenai's words, Asuma also stayed in place. His eyes were covered with a layer of mist at some point. Father. Did you see this? I'm also going to become a father. How nice would it be if you could see this scene? How nice would it be if you could personally hug my child, your grandson? Chapter 424. Father, I'm going on a mission. In front of the Woodleaf's memorial tablet, Asuma's hand slowly stroked the place where his father's name was engraved, then he put a bouquet of flowers in his hand on the ground. This bouquet of flowers was specially picked by Asuma after asking his disciple, Ino Yamanaka, who runs a flower shop. This bouquet of flowers looks a bit ordinary, even a bit like weeds growing on the side of the road. However, the dark green leaves seem to be full of vitality against the pale yellow petals. This bouquet of flowers is called Ting. Ino said that this bouquet of flowers is used to dedicate to brave martyrs. It is the most suitable flower to represent destruction and hope. My father, the 3 generations of Woodleaf Hokage, aren't they the martyrs for my own hopes and ideals? I finally continue my bloodline, and let the Yuan Fei clan have a successor. Isn't it also the most suitable gift for martyrs? In the beginning, I complained again and again that you weren't a qualified father, because you dedicated most of your life to Woodleaf Village. For Woodleaf, how much has our clan sacrificed? My elder brother, my mother, and you. But when I learned that I have a child, I suddenly understood why you can sacrifice your life for Woodleaf without hesitation. Not only because you are Woodleaf ninja, but also because our home is in Woodleaf. Our sacrifice is actually just to protect our home. From his arms, Asuma skillfully took out his cigarette box. Just as he took out a cigarette from it, the corner of his mouth slowly raised. With a bit of a bitter smile and joy, he looked at the memorial tablet as if he was talking to his father. You and I are the same, we can't live without cigarettes, but now for my child, I actually subconsciously began to refuse to smoke. In the beginning, did you also forcibly resist the urge to smoke, just to see me and my elder brother safely born? With that, Asuma also slowly sat in front of the memorial tablet, then took out a cigarette from his cigarette box. After hanging both cigarettes in his mouth, he took out one of them and gently placed it on the stone steps in front of the memorial tablet. Like a whisper, Asuma's voice was a little low and trembling as he said, Today, Mom and Kurenai are not here, you and I can finally smoke and chat casually, no one cares. Although you usually prefer to use your somewhat old pipe, but today, let's change the taste. After all, your pipe was placed in the Hokage's office as a souvenir by Yondame. After whispering, Asuma didn't speak again, and the surroundings fell into silence again. How long can a cigarette? In a short while, a cigarette has already burned out. Asuma also used his somewhat rough big hand to wipe his face, then after standing up, he walked straight in the direction of the village's gate. Asuma's voice seemed to be lingering in the wind. I will definitely come back, and watch my child grow up. I've already made up my mind. No matter whether the child is a boy or a girl, his name will be Future, because the place where he grew up and lived was the place where his grandfather, uncle, father, and many more people poured their own blood to create an irreplaceable future. In Nangongja's house, looking at the scroll in front of him, Nangongja's face was gloomy. Sure enough, in fact, Kakuzu and Haiden are actually chess pieces used by the Akatsuki to attract firepower. They so blatantly let Haydn, the leader of the Fire Temple, go to Woodleaf to ask for help. Due to his identity and the thought of protecting Column Force, Woodleaf definitely couldn't refuse to go forward to stop Haydn and Kakuzu. Haydn and Kakuzu are indeed the best candidates to attract firepower. The two of them, who can't be killed, have already attracted Woodleaf's attention after destroying the Fire Temple. Out of his own bad taste, he went to provoke Watergate with the matter of Second Last and Column Force's arrest. Woodleaf, on the other hand, did what the Akatsuki wanted and didn't have time to care about other things. During this period of time, the Akatsuki had already found the traces of the Sanbai and directly captured it. And according to the information of the Bloodcloak Pavilion, the ones who took action were Deidara and an unknown ninja with a spiral mask who replaced Sasori. Damn it, I should have seen these flaws. I should have gone to protect the Sanbai in advance. Slamming the scroll in his hand on the ground, Nangongja's face showed a rare trace of annoyance and anger. Nangongja was attracted by the Sanbai and lost his previous sensitive judgment, which naturally made Nangongja very annoyed. However, the real reason that made Nangongja unable to calm down was the words that Sanbai had said to him when he rescued it previously. Asking him to leave the ninja world and go to the Lion Clan's different space to lurk. The three last sounded as if everything had been predestined a long time ago. These words have always been a knot in Nangongja's heart. It was as if the whole world was following a fixed script, no matter how hard he tried, to change everything, it was just in vain. Such a sense of powerlessness made Nangongja angry and made Nangongja unable to accept it. You must keep a close eye on the Akatsuki. I don't believe that everything is predestined. Isn't it the pursuit of the cultivators of my generation to conquer the heavens? If this world really has such an inviolable rule, then I will use the sword in my hand to cut a path. This is the path of me, and also the path of Banishment Senior. After saying these words, Nangongja instantly felt a different kind of pressure descending on his head. That kind of irresistible sense of oppression lingered on Nangongja's body for a long time, as if his body was entangled with layers of shackles. But when Nangongja's idea of going against the heavens was deliberately hidden by Nangongja, that sense of restraint quietly disappeared. Is there really an inviolable rule in this world? Nangongja didn't know at first, but at this moment, Nangongja had some guesses in his heart. Why did Senior Banishment Senior die for no reason when his strength is clearly far superior to mine? What kind of person can defeat and even kill Senior Banishment who is completely beyond the so-called Kage level? The answer is no. Yen. And you. Chapter 425. Asuma, Chiriku, and Shikata were jumping forward in the forest outside the range of the Woodleaf. When the Woodleaf Umbu determined the range of Haydn and Kakuzu's activities, Watergate immediately handed the relevant information to Asuma. As a survivor of the Fire Temple, Chiriku should stay in the Woodleaf Ninja Village and wait for Asuma to complete the mission, but even Chiriku couldn't calm down for a long time after hearing the news. Watergate had no choice but to let Chiriku and Asuma come together to perform the mission. Before leaving, Watergate also told Asuma that even if the mission fails, he must ensure Chiriku's safety. After all, Chiriku is not a ninja under the Woodleaf, but the current abbot of the Fire Temple. Sensei, we have obtained accurate information about Kakuzu and Haydn, but they don't know much about us. This is our advantage, we should make full use of this condition and become the key to our victory. Shikamaru, who was wearing a vest representing the identity of a Chunin, increased his speed to the side of his instructor, Asuma, and said to Asuma. Although his face still looked immature, the light of wisdom that bloomed in his clear eyes was so clear that it could be seen clearly. In the past few years, Shikamaru had also become more and more intelligent. The child who had always been crushed by him in chess had become a seasoned chess player. There were even many times when he would suddenly make a dangerous move that was difficult for him to solve. Asuma is also very clear about Shikamaru's words, so Asuma nodded and said to Shikamaru, "Indeed, fighting is a matter of playing to your strengths and avoiding your weaknesses. Play all the advantages that can be played and avoid all the disadvantages that hinder you. I know, with your character, I know you must have made a lot of plans. But I want to tell you that a plan is always just a plan. In the battle, everything is fleeting. We can't be sure whether we ignore or don't know any important information. At this time, what we need to do is to move forward bravely." As Shikamaru's instructor, Asuma knows Shikamaru very well. Although Shikamaru looked humble most of the time, the pride in his heart was hard to eliminate. This was a flaw in Shikamaru's plan. Even Shikamaru himself understood this. But knowing didn't mean that he could correct himself. Perhaps Shikamaru needed to experience a heart-wrenching pain because of his arrogance before he could truly change. Seeing Asuma teaching his disciple, even Chiku found it hard to get a word in edgewise. Choji and Ino, on the other hand, hid far away as if they were afraid of Asuma nagging at them. After Asuma's awkward silence, they could only fall into silence and continue on their way. Finally, Asuma's group of 5 arrived at the location of Kakuzu and Haiden. Haiden and Kakuzu didn't seem to have any intention of hiding. They just stood on a very conspicuous hill. They looked a little tired as they sat on the ground and leaned gently on the tree behind them. Seeing the arrival of Asuma's group, they didn't look surprised at all. On the contrary, they seemed to have known the arrival of Asuma's group. Seeing Chiku among Asuma's group, Haiden, who was leaning on the tree, said to Kakuzu as if he saw something new. "Hey, this person is really strange. We clearly let him go on purpose, but in the end, he still followed us here. Could it be that after the battle, this bald donkey has realized the strength of Lord Evil G, Sama and wants Master Haiden to personally take him into the arms of Lord Evil G, Sama?" Listening to Haiden's nagging beside him, Kakuzu seemed to be used to Haiden's nagging temperament. Ignoring Haiden, Kakuzu stood up from his sitting position and looked at Asuma's group with interest. Yuan Fei, Asuma, Chiku, and the new pig Shika Dai trio, not bad, not bad. Originally, when I let Chiku go last time, I felt that it was a pity. After all, Chiku has a high reward. I didn't expect that Chiku and Asuma would come this time. At the same time, there are 3 more. Kakuzu stared at the group of 5 standing in front of him. That kind of fanatical gaze made people's hair stand on end. In addition to Kakuzu's words and some information about Kakuzu, Asuma and the others knew that Kakuzu didn't put them in his heart at all. To Kakuzu, they were just a full wallet waiting for him to harvest. Di Lu, who had always been good-tempered, had his eyes wide open at this moment. A rare anger shrouded his heart. Buddha taught his disciple to forgive others, but Buddha also had a fierce gaze. Di Lu thought that he could endure the hatred in his heart, but when he saw the enemy standing in front of him, he couldn't suppress his anger anymore. "Welcome, Thousand Hands Kill." He used chakra to condense the appearance of Thousand Hands Guanyin behind him, but in an instant, the kind Thousand Hands Guanyin turned into an angry King Kong. The palm stretched out from King Kong's body and fiercely slapped towards Haiden's direction with great power, wanting to crush Haiden into a meat paste. Haiden looked at the huge palms that were attacking him, but he didn't dodge. He looked straight at the huge palms with clear lines on them. There was no trace of fear in his eyes. Kakuzu, who had been standing on the side, also made his move. A mask representing the 5 attributes of wind, fire, and earth split from Kakuzu's body. One ninjutsu after another quickly condensed in the mask, and then quickly released. Earth release, earth flow wall. Wind release, pressure. Fire release, first cut. A wall of mud mixed with chakra emerged from the ground. Although it didn't directly resist the huge palms of King Kong, the original momentum of the palms was delayed for a moment. Pressure and first cut were mixed together, forming the power of a mixed ninjutsu. A large flame rushed towards the direction of King Kong and Chiku. Chapter 426. Chiriku's Welcome, Thousand Hands Kill has two forms, one is Thousand Hands Guanyin, the other is Angry King Kong. These two forms have their own advantages and disadvantages. Thousand Hands Guanyin focuses on defense, while Angry King Kong focuses on offense. Right now, the Dharma idol on Di Lu's body was the glaring Vajra. Although it had a powerful attack power, it had also lost its original defensive power. Looking at the powerful ninjutsu that was mixed together by Kakuzu and Kakuzu, Chiriku could only withdraw his King Kong Dharma idol and leave the range of Kakuzu's mixed ninjutsu. Shikamaru, who has been standing behind Asuma, looked at Chiriku escaping in embarrassment, and his eyebrows slowly wrinkled. They had a plan before coming here. Kakuzu and Haiden's undying ability is very troublesome. They need to use special methods to defeat these undying existences. But when Chiriku saw Haiden and Kakuzu, he lost control of his emotions and directly condensed his form to attack them. Although Shikamaru can understand it, he can't accept it. This kind of deviation from the plan is very displeasing to Shikamaru. Asuma naturally noticed Shikamaru's state, but now is not the time to educate his subordinates. Asuma quickly came to Chiriku's side, covering his retreat, so that Haiden and Kakuzu can't seize the opportunity to attack. Chiriku naturally understood that he had lost his composure and ruined the plan. He looked apologetically at Asuma, who came forward to protect him. He also quickly retreated to the side of Shikamaru and Shikamaru's new trio. "Are you ready? We will act according to the plan." Shikamaru looked at Chiriku and said seriously. After all, he is young and impetuous. When he spoke, he didn't have the slyness of someone who has been in Jianghu for many years. Chiriku directly saw the suppressed annoyance in his eyes. But first, Chiriku is indeed wrong. Second, Chiriku was born to learn Buddhism. If he didn't encounter the enemy who destroyed his life, he could still control his mentality perfectly. Chiriku nodded, apparently agreeing with Shikamaru's words. He also adjusted his mentality and began to prepare to fight Kakuzu and Haiden with the new Ino Shikacho trio and Asuma. Ino rushed in Asuma's direction, and the two of them, one master and one disciple, rushed in the direction of Haiden. Chiriku, Shikamaru, and Choji rushed towards Kakuzu. Welcome, Thousand Hands Kill. Fire Escape, Incinerate. Chiriku and Asuma used their signature ninjutsu at the same time, attacking Haiden and Kakuzu respectively. The chakra mask that just released the ninjutsu seemed to be condensing chakra to prepare for the next wave of attack, so Kakuzu was very sensible to avoid Kuroka's attack. As for Fei Duan, although he had an immortal body, he could still feel pain. In order to avoid being burned all over his body, Fei Duan also jumped away to avoid Asuma's attack. In an instant it was divided into two parts. Fei Duan himself was actually very troublesome because of his undying ability, but without his undying ability, Fei Duan's strength was actually very ordinary. As a follower of Evil God, in addition to that strange curse technique, Fei Duan could only use his skillful but not that brilliant taijutsu. On the other hand, Asuma himself was very good at fire release, wind release, and taijutsu. A pair of flying swallow blades that could connect to chakra was very difficult to defend against. In order to prevent Fei Duan from suddenly attacking Asuma and getting Asuma's blood, Shikamaru deliberately arranged Ino to fight Fei Duan with Asuma, so that when Asuma was unprepared, she could use the Yamanaka clan's secret technique to control Fei Duan and win a chance for Asuma to survive. Kakuzu himself had 5 chakra hearts of different attributes, and together with the masks, he was like a chakra cannon. Naturally, he needed someone with high HP and high defense to be in the front line, and then find an opportunity for the DPS to display their power. Chiriku, who had the Thousand Hands Kill, was able to display an extremely strong defense when he released the Thousand Hands Guanyin, which was enough to block Kakuzu's ninjutsu. Shikamaru himself could also rely on his family's secret shadow technique to find an opportunity to control Kakuzu's movements, and then let Choji use multiplication jutsu to attack. In order to ensure that Choji's attack was strong enough, the Akamichi clan's 3 colored pills, spinach ball and curry ball, were already in Choji's mouth, and the chili ball, which could display the strongest power, was also hidden in his wrist guard. Everything was as Shikamaru calculated before. Fei Duan was tightly entangled by Asuma and Ino, and there was no room for him to display his strength. On Kakuzu's side, Shikamaru, Choji, and Chiriku's progress was also quite smooth. This time, after Di Lu calmed himself down, he was able to display his strength in a stable manner. The Guanyin Dharma behind him firmly blocked every attack from Kakuzu. Whether it was the thorns, flames, storms, lightning, or water, they were all firmly blocked by the Guanyin Dharma. The mask released by Kakuzu itself needed some time to replenish after exhausting the chakra. Seeing that the chakra contained in the mask was about to be depleted, Kakuzu's mentality slightly fluctuated. The frequency of ninjutsu attacks increased significantly, and Shikamaru, who has been staring at Kakuzu, naturally noticed Kakuzu's state at this moment. Forming a hand seal, a thin black silk-like shadow rushed in the direction of Kakuzu. Seeing that his shadow had touched Kakuzu's shadow, Shikamaru's face showed a victorious smile. Shadow Imitation Jutsu. The moment Shikamaru's chakra surged and launched the ninjutsu, Kakuzu's body became stiff. Choji, now. Seeing that Kakuzu was under his control, Shikamaru immediately reminded Choji to attack. He instantly swallowed the spinach ball and curry ball in his mouth, and a terrifying chakra emerged from Choji's body. Super Multiplication Jutsu. With the powerful chakra erupting from his body, Choji directly broke through his limit. His body expanded dozens of times in an instant, standing on the ground like a small mountain. His huge fist was raised high, and it was about to hit Kakuzu. Chapter 427. Got it. Seeing that Choji was about to attack Kakuzu, Shikamaru said in his heart. From the analysis of the known information, although Kakuzu had 5 hearts, which represented his 5 lives, he couldn't control his masked monsters from a distance. Choji's attack range completely covered Kakuzu's masked monsters and Kakuzu's body, and Shikamaru used shadow imitation to make Kakuzu unable to move and control his masked monsters. One of the members of the undead duo was easily eliminated, and the plan was carried out smoothly. After that, as long as everyone focused their attacks on Haydn wouldn't be able to resist at all, then they would seal Haydn and everything would be fine. But after all, a plan was a plan, and information was information. Just like Asuma said before, Shikamaru relied too much on the information and plans he knew. Seeing that Choji's attack was about to hit Kakuzu, the black threads condensed from the Earth Grudge secret technique were released from Kakuzu's body and wrapped around him layer by layer. Almost in an instant, Kakuzu turned into a black sphere. Choji's punch directly shattered the fire, wind, and earth element masks, but Kakuzu's black sphere didn't seem to suffer too much damage. The black sphere was flattened like a rubber ball after being hit by a huge force. Then, it immediately bounced back from the ground. Because of the huge force, the threads of Earth's grudge that wrapped around Kakuzu's body had cracked a little. Broken black threads floated in the air. When the black sphere bounced into the air, Kakuzu was no longer under the control of Shikamaru's shadow imitation technique. The silk threads wrapped around his body also loosened, revealing Kakuzu. Although the corners of his mouth had a little bit of blood due to the shock, his mental state was very good. Choji, who used super magnification, had a hard time turning around because of his huge body. He could only watch as Kakuzu floated over his head. Chiriku, who had been enduring Kakuzu's attacks, at this moment, his 1,000 arms Avalokiteshvara became thin and trembled, he couldn't maintain it any longer. Kakuzu didn't pay attention to Chiriku, who was no longer able to resist, and 2 hearts representing the lightning and water attributes also split from his body. Threads of earth grudge spread out from Kakuzu's body and connected to the 2 masked monsters. The 2 masks released lightning and water at the same time, instantly turning into steam on Kakuzu's body. Kakuzu also stopped in the air for a short time. Shikamaru looked at Kakuzu, who was obviously preparing to attack him, and immediately became vigilant. Because of the secret technique of the Nara clan, Shikamaru can't use ordinary jutsu, and the shadow secret technique can't attack the target in the air, so Shikamaru could only take out a few kunai from his ninja tool bag, and threw them at Kakuzu, Chiriku, and Chiriku, who was floating in the air, and Chiriku, Chiriku, and Chiriku. Water release, water curtain. The masked monsters on Kakuzu's body instantly released a defensive ninjutsu, and a layer of water curtain covered Kakuzu's body. The kunai with the explosive tag immediately exploded after hitting the water curtain. The water curtain was a defensive ninjutsu, so the explosion of a few explosive tags didn't have any effect on Kakuzu. In the midst of the explosion, Kakuzu's figure flew out from it. The water curtain that shrouded Kakuzu still didn't disappear, and it wrapped around his body. Kakuzu made a hand seal, and the water curtain tent flew towards Shikamaru as if it had received an order. In another battlefield, Asuma suddenly turned his head and looked at Shikamaru, who was fighting with Kakuzu. Asuma naturally saw Shikamaru's current situation. "Ino, do your best to control Haiden, I'm going to help Shikamaru." Asuma shouted loudly to Ino, who was wandering around him and Haiden. He wanted Ino to help him entangle Haiden, and then help Shikamaru. Naturally, Haiden didn't want Asuma, who had been fighting with him, to leave. He waved the bloody march scythe in his hand, wanting to attack Asuma. However, Ino quickly understood her teacher's intention and made a hand seal towards Haiden. Ninjutsu, mind rotation technique. Ino's spiritual power quickly rushed into Haiden's mind, and temporarily controlled Haiden, who was preparing to attack. But obviously, Haiden's spiritual power seemed to be very complicated and difficult to control, and Ino's face also showed a touch of struggle and pain. On the other side, Shikamaru has been wrapped in the water curtain, and the lightning mask near Kakuzu's shoulder also finished condensing ninjutsu. Lightning release, false darkness. A lightning spear condensed by chakra was spat out from the mask. Looking at the lightning spear rushing towards him, Shikamaru's originally wise mind has now become blank. Am I really going to die here? Shikamaru couldn't help but have such an idea in his heart. Originally, Shikamaru has always heard that people will use a very short time to review their life before they die. Shikamaru originally felt disdainful about this, because Shikamaru thought that he would not leave any regret in his life, and his death should be a peaceful departure. But now that he is about to die, Shikamaru also began to recall his short life ironically. The ignorance of childhood, the high-spirited spirit after becoming a ninja, and the inner pride when he became a chunin flashed through Shikamaru's mind one by one. But in the end, Shikamaru began to think about something that has nothing to do with his life. If he dies, what will happen to Choji, Ino, Asuma-sensei, and even Midland, who is not so familiar with him? Because of his excessive arrogance and self-confidence, these people would fall into a dangerous situation. All of this is because of him. If it's just his own death, Shikamaru may feel that it's a pity, but he doesn't regret it. After all, it's his own mistake, and he can't blame others. But because of his own mistake, other people's lives are involved. Such a thing is what Shikamaru can't bear. Regret, endless regret began to shroud Shikamaru's heart, as if he fell into a dark bottomless abyss. But Shikamaru found himself so powerless, he could only close his eyes and wait for his death. Chapter 428. Dead silence, dark, cold, but with a touch of burning heat. Shikamaru knew that the water curtain covering his body has been hit by the pseudo-darkness. The coldness of the water and the scorching heat of the lightning acted on his body at the same time. Shikamaru, who was originally holding his breath, could no longer hold it back in his body. His mouth was constantly filled with ice water, and his skin was constantly spread by the lightning. The loss of life was so obvious. When Shikamaru felt that his consciousness was a little bit blurred, a huge force grabbed his collar. The feeling of cold and heat that originally shrouded him quickly faded away. Shikamaru's chest was constantly moving up and down, trying to suck the air into his chest. I survived. I survived? But it was obviously a death situation. How did I survive? Shikamaru used all his strength to open his eyes, turning his stiff neck, a familiar face reflected in Shikamaru's eyes. A slightly simple and honest face with a rough beard. This person is his instructor, Yuan Fei Asuma. Asuma-sensei. Looking at Asuma, Shikamaru laboriously called out Asuma's name. The fear and regret in his voice were so obvious. While speaking, Shikamaru's body couldn't help but turn a little bit. Asuma's originally comforting smile was replaced by pain at this moment. Pain? Why is it painful? Looking at the arm that Asuma was grabbing, he found that the originally thick and sturdy arm had now become charred black. When he was wrapped in the water curtain, Kakuzu used the pseudo-darkness lightning ninjutsu. Although water itself is conductive, the lightning produced by chakra is still different from ordinary lightning. In the water curtain, which is also condensed from chakra, the conduction speed of the lightning was reduced a lot, and most of the lightning didn't have time to invade the water curtain, but floated on the surface of the water curtain. Asuma, who stretched out his hand to grab Shikamaru out of the water curtain, naturally suffered far more lightning than Shikamaru. The powerful lightning directly turned Asuma's right arm into a piece of charcoal. With the slight rotation of Shikamaru's body, the charcoal arm naturally broke directly. If the arm was intact, even if it was injured by wood leaf, there would be a way to heal it, but now it has completely turned into a piece of charcoal. It can be said that it is completely useless. As a ninja who is proficient in ninjutsu and taijutsu, losing an arm is almost directly turning him into a cripple. It's okay, everything can wait until the mission is completed. Behind Kakuzu, a figure with chakra condensed on his back quickly rushed towards Kakuzu. When Choji saw that Shikamaru was shrouded in the water curtain, he immediately dispelled his super magnification technique. Suppressing his exhaustion, he stuffed the chili pill hidden in his wrist guard into his mouth. Chakra far more powerful than before burst out from Choji's body. With a powerful step on the ground, Choji's slender body suddenly shot out from the ground, rushing towards Kakuzu. Originally, Choji was going to rescue Shikamaru from the water curtain, but seeing Asuma saving Shikamaru and Asuma's charred right arm, the anger in his heart made Choji immediately turn around and rush towards Kakuzu. Although the fist didn't look like Chakra's chakra, the power contained in it was far beyond the power of Chakra's chakra. Kakuzu didn't have time to react. Choji immediately punched Kakuzu's body continuously. The black threads of the earth grudge were sent flying in the air, and the two remaining masks on Kakuzu's body began to shatter. Kakuzu's eyes, which still had a little bit of vitality, had now lost their luster. Choji's fist didn't stop bombarding Kakuzu's body. The simple and honest Choji was completely controlled by his inner anger. This person who caused his good friend to be seriously injured and his teacher to lose an arm had become the person he hated the most in his life. Looking at Choji, who was immersed in his anger, Chiriku condensed his chakra in his throat, and a thunderous sound rushed out from his throat like the morning bell and evening drum. Choji, calm down. Kakuzu is already dead, the one we should be fighting now isn't him. Right now, Ino is trying her best to control Haiden. What you should do is to follow the previous plan and defeat Haiden and seal him. Otherwise, all our efforts will be in vain. Hearing the thunderous voice of the ground continent, Ding Ji's originally red eyes gradually regained some clarity. That's right, now was not the time for him to vent his anger. He is a ninja, what he should do is to do his best to complete his mission. Choji forcibly turned his eyes away from Kakuzu and looked in the direction of Haiden. Taking advantage of the fact that the power stimulated by the chili ball has not disappeared, Choji quickly rushed towards Haiden. One punch, 2 punches, 3 punches, the seemingly ordinary punches landed on Fei Duan's body, and the huge force directly shattered all the joints on Fei Duan's body. Ino also released her control on Haiden at the right time. In any case, Haiden has no power to resist. Ino, you also need some time to relieve the pressure on your mind. It seems that the seal will need me and Chiriku to preside over it, so it is necessary to accumulate strength at the right time. His limbs were broken, and his spine was broken into several sections. Although Haydn was still breathing, he was paralyzed on the ground and couldn't move. The chakra on Choji's body has slowly faded, and an irresistible sense of exhaustion directly shrouded Choji's heart, and his slender body fell straight to the ground. Fortunately, Tsunade was in Konoha at this moment. Otherwise, Choji, who had overdrawn his chakra after taking the chili pill, didn't know how long it would take for him to recover. As long as Haydn is successfully sealed, this mission is considered over. Only one person was unconscious. One person was seriously injured, and one person lost an arm. The cost of killing two important combat forces of the Akatsuki is not a loss. But as the parties involved, Chiriku, Asuma, and Shinobi Shikigami were not happy at all at this moment. Chapter 429. Chi, the sound of a sharp weapon cutting flesh was so clear, and the arms of the people in front of him had been cut off under the sword. Blood was constantly flowing from the broken wounds, splashing into the sky. The huge amount of blood was so obvious, but such a little blood only added a little bit to the strong smell of blood around him. Sasuke looked around him and suddenly found that no one was standing on the ground. One by one, the masked figures fell to the ground. At a rough glance, there were hundreds of them. It was hard to imagine what kind of battle Sasuke had experienced to create such a battlefield. The ground was slowly covered with the broken limbs of these ninjas, but surprisingly, no one lost their lives. Everyone fell to the ground, wailing and crying in pain. Sasuke's white coat still looked very clean, but Sasuke glanced at a corner of the lower left hem of his clothes with a little disgust. A drop of blood, the size of an ink spot, dyed dark red by blood, was embellished on the white coat. The red that represented life, and the white without any impurities, looked strangely beautiful. It was like a piece of bright red plum blossoms suddenly fell on a pure white snow-covered land. It was obviously beautiful, but Sasuke seemed to be very disgusted that his clothes were contaminated by the enemy's blood. He directly took off the white coat he was wearing from his body, and threw the embroidered, pure white, and apparently very high-end white coat on the ground as if he was throwing away garbage. The blood that had been constantly flowing on the ground had now gathered into a pool of blood on the ground. The white coat was also coincidentally thrown directly into the pool of blood. The blood quickly soaked the white coat, turning it dark red, and the dark lines on the bloody coat became more and more obvious. "So, you are so soft-hearted?" A gloomy and hoarse voice sounded not far behind Sasuke, looking at Sasuke standing on the ground wearing only a sleeveless shirt, and said with a slight mockery and sigh. Sasuke glanced back at Orochimaru who was standing behind him, and said in a cold voice, "The obstacles you set for me this time are really low." He purposely leaked information about me and lured the forces that wanted to eliminate me to attack me. But what difference did it make whether they were killed or not? If I kill them, I'll just be wasting my energy. If I don't kill them, I'll be able to let their masters know that I'm not someone they can easily bully. Or, let someone stronger come and fight me. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better to give up this plan early? Orochimaru stuck out his long tongue from his mouth, waving it in the air like a python flicking its tongue. Looking at the slowly rotating Sharingan in Sasuke's eyes, the more Orochimaru looked, the more his heart itched. His body had already reached its limit. During this period of time, the medicine he used had changed from the original level 4 medicine to level 7 medicine. Moreover, his body's resistance to the medicine was also constantly increasing. As long as he finds an opportunity, he can take Sasuke's body into his own hands. The long-awaited Sharingan, the humiliation of being humiliated by Itachi Uchiha, who was also a member of Akatsuki, can be solved one by one. Thinking of this, Orochimaru's mood couldn't help but get excited. I'm very pleased that you can think like this. I hope you really think like this, and it's the ruthlessness in your heart that makes you do this, not the remaining weakness. Sasuke gently waved the long sword in his hand, and the blood wrapped around the silver-white blade left the blade under the action of inertia. Sasuke casually put the long sword in his hand back into the scabbard behind him, and looked at Orochimaru with a cold look. In the face of a ruthless target, I will naturally not hesitate to show my ruthless side. You don't need to be noisy here. For Sasuke's disrespectful attitude, Orochimaru just smiled casually. In Orochimaru's eyes, although Sasuke was excellent as his research material, Sasuke could only be his research material. After all, this body is his own. And this indifferent soul would also be devoured by him. So, this is just a temporary offense, what's there to mind? In silence, the two returned to Orochimaru's base near the battlefield. Without saying anything, Sasuke directly separated from Orochimaru and returned to his room. After closing the door of his room, the frost that originally covered Sasuke's face slowly melted. I don't know if the message I left was seen by Nangong, sensei. Orochimaru's desire for me has become more and more obvious recently. And according to my observation, Kabuto has begun to increase the dosage and variety of medicine for Orochimaru. Orochimaru's reincarnation ceremony is estimated to be in a few days. I still have to prepare as soon as possible. I don't know if the method Nangong, sensei told me to deal with Orochimaru will work. Well, no matter whether it works or not, everything depends on this. As long as I succeed, then I can get all of Orochimaru's ninjutsu knowledge through the secret technique. If I don't succeed, I will just lose my life. Such a risk is not a loss. On the battlefield where Sasuke had just fought, a Bloodcloak Pavilion's aquamarine altar disciple in aquamarine clothes had picked up Sasuke's white coat that seemed to have been thrown on the ground because of mysophobia. On the blood-soaked white coat, the lines became more and more conspicuous. These lines were one of the ciphers used by the Blood Cloth Pavilion. This communication method was also the way for Sasuke and Nangongja to exchange information and communicate. This coat will be brought back to the Blood Cloth Pavilion by the Blood Cloth Pavilion disciple who has been responsible for watching Sasuke. After it is cracked by professionals, it will be directly handed over to Nangongja. Orochimaru is also an existence that Nangongja is afraid of. Not only because of his madness, but also because of his research ability that is beyond the reach of ordinary people. Such a freak who is not controlled by anyone, is a huge threat. As long as there is a chance, Nangongja doesn't mind taking Orochimaru's life. Chapter 430. Orochimaru-sama, your potion consumption has reached the limit of level 10. If you continue like this, your body won't be able to hold on. I suggest that you change your body as soon as possible, and during this time, Sasuke is not so quiet, he must have found something. We still have to act in advance to reduce all possible troubles. Taking the medicine bowl handed over by Orochimaru, Kabuto respectfully said to Orochimaru. His eyes, which originally looked a little shrewd and treacherous, now glowed with light. It seems that he has some plans in his heart. At this moment, Orochimaru, who has fallen on the bed, was too lazy to pay attention to Kabuto's plans. He just glanced at Kabuto casually, indicating that he doesn't need to continue. Just when Orochimaru wanted to say something, his chest heaved up and down fiercely, as if he was suffering from some great pain. A very painful cough came from Orochimaru's mouth. When Orochimaru raised his head, under his sweat-soaked hair, his eyes were covered with scarlet blood, and his face was getting paler and paler. You can leave first, I will consider what you said. Kabuto knew that Orochimaru didn't want to entangle with him too much on such a topic. For Orochimaru, when he uses the reincarnation jutsu, his body is most dangerous. Even if it's Kabuto, Orochimaru is not willing to give him this degree of trust. Watching Kabuto leave his room, Orochimaru's eyes stared at the door of his room. His eyes seemed to have lost focus for a while, as if his soul was pulled out of his body. But soon, Orochimaru's eyes regained their original color, because Orochimaru sensed a familiar chakra condensing at his door. A white and blue chakra blade pierced through the wooden door, as if ignoring the distance, it went straight to Orochimaru's heart. At this moment, Orochimaru's body is already extremely weak. When he saw such a chakra blade stabbing towards his heart, Orochimaru subconsciously crossed his arms to block this blow. He swung his arm and deflected the chakra blade to the side. The wooden door was cut into many small pieces in an instant. With the sound of the wooden pieces falling to the ground, Sasuke's cold face appeared in Orochimaru's eyes. Sasuke's left hand held the sword-shaped chakra blade shaped by Chidori chakra, and his right hand held the silver long sword that he had always loved. Cough. Orochimaru suddenly coughed a few times. He wanted to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand, but he found that his hands were pierced by the chakra blade in Sasuke's hand. "I thought you would come earlier, but I didn't expect you to come only now." Sasuke and Orochimaru have been together for so long, and they have a proper understanding of each other. Sasuke knows Orochimaru's ambition for his body, and Orochimaru also knows that Sasuke will never be willing to be captured. Therefore, this battle is actually expected by both sides, and there is nothing to be surprised about. What's the difference between earlier and later? Anyway, no matter what, you can't change the fact that I am getting stronger and you are getting weaker and weaker. Remember a few days ago, you said that I am not ruthless enough? Now that I have emptied your value, it's time to deal with you and do what I should do. Sasuke slowly walked in the direction of Orochimaru, and he became more talkative than usual. You covet the blood flowing in my body, and regard me as your own experimental material and reincarnation material. Have you ever thought that all of your plans might be in danger of failure? People like you, to be honest, are the people I hate the most, you know. Looking at Sasuke's face becoming more and more ferocious, Orochimaru looked at Sasuke and laughed. It's really interesting, so you have always cared about such things? You are really naive and childish, always indulging in the actions of others. If I were like you, I wouldn't have been driven out of Woodleaf Ninja Village by my master because of human experiments. Sasuke, you said that you emptied me of everything? To a certain extent, you did gain some of my knowledge and insight. But you still haven't learned the most important characteristic of me, that is, to stick to your own ideas and move forward. Shackled by one's own tragic past, entangled by meaningless contempt. How can someone like you defeat your brother, Uchiha Itachi? Or... Orochimaru's words haven't finished, but the three Tomo in Sasuke's eyes turned quickly. Who allowed you to say this name? Chakra in Sasuke's body surged quickly, and the lightning that had been solidified rushed into Orochimaru's body along the direction of Chidori Egi. While paralyzing Orochimaru's body, it also constantly destroyed Orochimaru's internal organs. Black blood continued to spit out from Orochimaru's mouth, and Orochimaru's body smelled like barbecue. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Orochimaru's mouth suddenly opened, and a huge white shadow flashed. Orochimaru's body was like a snake after shedding its skin, lying on the bed softly. So this is your true body? Sasuke slowly turned his head, and the Chidori Egi in his hand was also touched by Sasuke. It's really ugly. With a little disgust, Sasuke looked at the strange white snake in front of him. The scales on the snake's body were actually made up of white pythons that were as thick as a person's wrist. The pythons were constantly writhing, causing people to involuntarily feel a sense of disgust in their hearts. The most disgusting part was the head of this big snake. The features of a human face and a snake face, and the fluffy and hard black hair were full of a creepy feeling. This was Orochimaru's body, using the immortal reincarnation method, white phosphorus Orochi. At this moment, Orochimaru was obviously ready to seize Sasuke's body and let himself have the coveted Sharingan. Chapter 431. So this is your true body? Looking at Orochimaru, although Sasuke had a feeling of disgust in his eyes, he wasn't surprised. Orochimaru's immortal reincarnation is a ninjutsu beyond ordinary people's knowledge. It's understandable that such a ninjutsu will have a certain impact on life forms. After staying with Orochimaru for so long, whether it's someone who can turn himself into a monster or a liquid, Sasuke hasn't seen such a thing. Just turning himself into a strange python didn't surprise Sasuke. I thought you would be even more surprised. Your indifferent attitude makes me feel very bored. After turning into Orochimaru, Orochimaru's voice also changed. His hoarse and low voice sounded more ethereal at this moment. Surprised? I've already given up on this feeling. On the contrary, I can show you the ruthlessness you said. Sasuke gently pulled the silver long sword in his hand and slowly walked towards Orochimaru. Yes, that's it. Only this side of you is what I need the most. Orochimaru looked at Sasuke's indifferent appearance and began to shout excitedly. The immortal reincarnation was actually very risky. The target of one's reincarnation would instinctively resist the ritual. Under normal circumstances, Orochimaru will choose ninjas with excellent bloodlines but not so powerful as his reincarnation material. Only in this case can the probability of reincarnation be increased. However, because of Orochimaru's desire for Sharingan and his eagerness to challenge and even defeat Itachi, Orochimaru had to let Sasuke's strength quickly accumulate. As a result, Sasuke's strength became very powerful, and even Sasuke hid part of his strength under Orochimaru's supervision. The powerful ninjutsu that Sasuke used just now involves chakra's nature change and shape change. It was quietly practiced under Orochimaru's strict supervision. Orochimaru even suffered a little bit under this trick. Originally, Orochimaru was confident in defeating Sasuke and taking his body, but now, although Orochimaru didn't show it, he was not sure that he could really defeat Sasuke. Seeing Sasuke slowly walking towards him, Orochimaru's heart couldn't help but tighten. The white snakes that made up the scales of the white snake rose into the air and bit toward Sasuke. The silver-white long sword in Sasuke's hand waved casually and cut the white snake that came towards him into two halves. Originally, he thought that Orochimaru would display some special abilities after transforming into his own body, but unexpectedly, Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi state was very fragile. Sasuke attached his lightning attribute chakra to the silver long sword in his hand in the form of Chidori blade, and his cold face showed a cold smile of victory. But just as the long sword was raised halfway, Sasuke felt that his wrist had become weak. The silver-white long sword that was clearly held in his hand fell directly to the ground at this moment, and the crisp sound sounded so clear in the slightly silent room. Ha ha ha. Orochimaru's mouth suddenly came out with a strange smile. The white snake on my body is not just a fragile decoration. Its blood will vaporize into the air at the moment of contact with the air. With the colorless and odorless gas emitted from my body, it will become the most violent hypnotic gas. Now, do you still have a chance to resist me? With that, Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi state body rushed towards Sasuke fiercely. Sasuke tried his best to condense Chidori Egi spear in his hand, and waved it with all his strength to cut off Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi body. But the feeling of fatigue that extended from the depths of his heart shrouded Sasuke's heart. Sasuke only felt that his eyes were dark, and he stood directly in place. We meet again. No. This should be the last time we meet, Sasuke. Orochimaru's voice reappeared in Sasuke's ears, and Sasuke opened his eyes and saw the appearance of the space around him. The space with a little pink color looked full of a disgusting feeling. Whether it was the place where he stood or the place where Orochimaru stood, it was like a piece of rotten meat. Not far from Sasuke, a mass of rotten meat wrapped around the body of the person who became Orochimaru's body in the past. So this is the immortal reincarnation? White phosphorus Orochi is actually not the true state of immortal reincarnation. Immortal reincarnation is actually a transformation of his own soul. Then after the preparation is done, he will forcibly invade the mind of the reincarnated person, occupy the consciousness of the reincarnated person, and make the reincarnated person's body into his own marionette? Obviously, it was a matter of life and death, but Sasuke observed his surroundings very indifferently. It seemed that the threat from Orochimaru was not as interesting as such a ninjutsu. Orochimaru also looked at Sasuke calmly. He had been worried that Sasuke would destroy his white phosphorus Orochi's body after he completed the preparation. But now that he has successfully invaded Sasuke's mind, everything will be a matter of course. After all, immortal reincarnation is almost irreversible at this stage. Sasuke also ignored Orochimaru. He waved his hand casually, and the scene around him began to change. The originally disgusting pink space has now turned into a forest scene, and on the stone steps in the forest, Orochimaru, wearing Akatsuki's uniform, and Itachi Uchiha, who Sasuke was thinking about, were looking at each other. There was no sound in the conversation between the two, but Sasuke roughly knew what they were talking about through their lips. Immortal reincarnation was to close all the protection of one's soul and enter the consciousness of the reincarnated person naked. Orochimaru didn't find it strange that Sasuke could see a part of his memory without guarding it. In fact, Orochimaru also recalled the time when he was tightly controlled by Itachi's jutsu, shackle jutsu, and had no room to resist at all when Itachi told him that he was powerless in front of the Sharingan. All this humiliation will end after he obtains Uchiha Sasuke's Sharingan and the complete Uchiha bloodline. Chapter 432. Orochimaru, I always thought you were a smart person. But now it seems that you're still not smart enough. Looking at Orochimaru's excited face, Sasuke's cold face stared closely at Orochimaru's eyes. Although there was no sarcastic smile, Orochimaru still saw the disdain in Sasuke's eyes. It was the same look that Itachi had used to look at him with. Magical genjutsu, shackle technique. The exact same ninjutsu was cast by Sasuke through his Sharingan, and huge metal wedges were inserted straight into Orochimaru's body. That familiar feeling made Orochimaru's mood become particularly irritable. Am I going to fail again under the power of Sharingan? At the beginning, he failed at the hands of Itachi Uchiha, who already had Manjikyu Sharingan. Now he's going to experience failure again in the hands of Sasuke, who only has 3 Tomo Sharingan. No. Definitely not. Orochimaru manipulated the rotten flesh all over the space to cover Sasuke's body. Obviously, the rotten flesh was constantly eroding Sasuke's consciousness, but Sasuke's expression was still so indifferent, as if he wasn't the one who was about to be invaded. It was still those familiar eyes, the bloody eyes with the 3 tomos slowly rotating, staring at him so closely, which made Orochimaru more irritable and uneasy. Orochimaru, do you remember what my brother once said to you? Under the gaze of this pair of eyes, you will have nowhere to hide. The familiar words came out of Sasuke's mouth again, and the rotten flesh wrapped around Sasuke's body faded like a tide at this moment. Instead, Orochimaru's body began to be covered by the rotten flesh, and Orochimaru's eyes couldn't help but panic. In this spiritual space, his real spiritual body was destroyed here. Even Orochimaru wasn't sure if he had a chance to be resurrected again. When Orochimaru wanted to say something to Sasuke, the rotten flesh kept pouring into Orochimaru's mouth. Behind Sasuke, the rotten flesh seemed to have completely obeyed Sasuke's command, and a huge rotten snake had condensed there, staring at Orochimaru. Outside the door of Orochimaru's room, Kabuto stared blankly at Sasuke's body that had been broken into 2 parts on the ground. Kabuto knew that the reincarnation ceremony had begun. But Kabuto's heart was still faintly worried, because he was one of the people who had been watching Sasuke. Compared to Orochimaru, who was very confident in himself, or Orochimaru, who never showed his lack of confidence side, Kabuto was undoubtedly more concerned about Sasuke's changes. For Sasuke's growth over the years, Kabuto may be the one who knows better than Orochimaru. Therefore, Kabuto was actually very worried about Orochimaru's safety, but now that the ceremony had begun, Kabuto couldn't do anything, and could only wait for the final result. Sasuke, who was standing in the same place, finally opened his eyes. There was no confusion in his eyes. Instead, he looked very energetic. Kabuto stepped forward and blocked Sasuke, who wanted to walk out of the door. His eyes stared at Sasuke and said, "Now, should I call you Orochimaru-sama, or should I call you Sasuke-kun?" Sasuke's dark eyes glanced at Kabuto, and his face showed his usual cold expression, and said to Kabuto without any expression, "Natural selection, survival of the fittest. Since Orochimaru decided to devour me, then be prepared to be devoured by me. This world, from now on, there will be no such person as Orochimaru. There will only be me, who inherited all his knowledge, Uchiha Sasuke." Listening to Sasuke's words, Kabuto's hand slowly reached for the ninja tool bag behind him. But when his hand reached out, Kabuto put his hand in front of his body again. Kabuto knew that there was no way to fight against the grown Uchiha Sasuke with only the insignificant fighting skills and medical ninjutsu he had mastered, so he could only slowly move aside and let Sasuke walk past him. Sasuke walked out of the base step by step. The base chosen by Orochimaru was naturally a very remote place, so when Sasuke walked out of the base, there was no one around. Just as Sasuke was about to continue walking into the depths of the forest, Sasuke suddenly pulled out the silver-white long sword behind him and looked at the depths of the forest with vigilance. 3 Tomo Sharingan had already appeared in Sasuke's eyes, but even the 3 Tomo Sharingan didn't see anything strange in the forest. But Sasuke's heart really felt that someone was hiding in the forest. This almost animal-like intuition has saved Sasuke many times, so Sasuke decided to believe in his own judgment. "Don't be nervous, it's me." Like a reflection in a deep pool, a figure suddenly emerged in the dark forest. This figure slowly walked towards Sasuke, and his figure became more and more obvious. She was wearing a black outer robe, and there were patterns outlined by red silk threads at the edges. Her soft long hair was draped over her shoulders. "Previously, you contacted the disciples of the Blood Robe Pavilion through the Blood Cloak. After I learned about the situation, I immediately rushed over, hoping to help you. I didn't expect that. It seems that I'm a step late. Your current spiritual strength seems to have been greatly consumed." The person who came was naturally Nangongzhe. The message that was previously passed to the Blood Robe Pavilion had already reached Nangongzhe's hands. Nangongzhe knew that it was not easy to eliminate Orochimaru, so he immediately put down the matter at hand and came here, hoping to assist Sasuke in eliminating Orochimaru. When Nangongzhe arrived outside the base, he found that Sasuke had already come out from inside. Nangongzhe didn't doubt that Sasuke was not the real Sasuke, so Nangongzhe released a faint hostility to be noticed by Sasuke. However, the posture when preparing for battle, the subtle movements on the body can't be done just by imitation, so Nangongzhe, who found that Sasuke's state was not so normal, immediately greeted him. Chapter 433. Nangongzhe Sensei, I thought it would be an ordinary disciple of the Blood Cloak Pavilion who would come here to pick me up. I didn't expect you to come in person. Compared to Orochimaru, Sasuke was undoubtedly closer to Nangongzhe, who gave him a way to gain strength and care when he was at his weakest. Fortunately, you told me the flaw of Orochimaru's immortal reincarnation. Otherwise, I would have been doomed this time. Hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongzhe didn't know why he felt a little guilty. After all, the reason why he helped Sasuke was because of Itachi. He didn't care for Sasuke with a completely pure purpose. Now that Sasuke pushed the reason for defeating Orochimaru to himself, Nangongzhe was at a loss for a while. After all, Nangongzhe only heard Sasuke's description of Orochimaru's reincarnation jutsu. He went to the Blood Cloak Pavilion to check a little bit about the soul, and combined with some information from Itachi, he speculated that Orochimaru's soul should be under great pressure. So he suggested that if Sasuke really fell into a dangerous situation, he could use genjutsu to protect himself. When Orochimaru, who was suspicious, saw that things didn't go in the direction he expected, his inner anxiety would make his mentality unbalanced and create an opportunity for Sasuke to win. But these were all assumptions. Even Nangongja didn't dare to say that his guess was 100% correct. So at this moment, the gratitude from Sasuke was so harsh in Nangongja's ears. When Nangongja was about to say something, Sasuke's body softened and fell to the ground. This child is really defenseless against me? After a spiritual confrontation with Orochimaru, Sasuke's soul must have been exhausted to the extreme. The moment he saw me, he lost control of his body and fainted. Nangongja thought it was completely understandable. Slowly squatting down and carrying Sasuke on his back, Nangongja carried Sasuke away from Orochimaru's base. Before leaving, Nangongja glanced at the entrance of Orochimaru's base from the corner of his eyes. That trace of hostility was so obvious, but looking at Sasuke on his back, Nangongja didn't choose to do anything. Instead, he left the forest. Yakushi Kabuto. After all, he's just a small character who's proficient in medical ninjutsu. The most important thing right now is Sasuke on his back. Sasuke, who fell into a coma, didn't fall asleep unconsciously. Instead, he was deeply entangled by the nightmare. Only Sasuke knew how dangerous it was. In fact, when Sasuke was entangled by those carrion-like things, Sasuke could clearly feel that his body was no longer under his control. Sasuke knew that the reincarnation technique used by Orochimaru had actually taken effect. At the moment of life and death, Sasuke suddenly remembered Nangongja's speculation about the weakness of Orochimaru's reincarnation technique. Associating with part of Orochimaru's memory that he saw before, Sasuke began to exert genjutsu on Orochimaru with his Sharingan, step by step, leading Orochimaru to doubt himself. With the deepening of genjutsu, Orochimaru has been completely immersed in his self-denial. His defeat in the battle with Itachi Uchiha was indeed a huge sore point in Orochimaru's heart. Orochimaru, who was immersed in genjutsu, gradually found it difficult to maintain immortal reincarnation, and Sasuke also organized his spiritual strength at this moment to counterattack. After all, immortal reincarnation is a ritual based on the soul or spiritual strength. Since it's a ritual, it's naturally possible to usurp the dominance. Sasuke directly usurped the dominance of immortal reincarnation and became the controller of immortal reincarnation through the accumulation of spiritual strength after opening his Sharingan. Sasuke sealed Orochimaru's useless memories through the power of immortal reincarnation, and left the knowledge that he thought was useful to him in his spiritual space to slowly absorb. After completing this series of operations, Sasuke actually found it difficult to support his body. But after opening his eyes, he saw Kabuto standing at the door. Sasuke also thought that he couldn't show weakness in front of Kabuto. Otherwise, how could Kabuto, who was as poisonous as Orochimaru, let him leave safely? So, Sasuke walked out of Orochimaru's base. Even if he had noticed that Kabuto was behind him, Sasuke didn't mention any plans to eliminate Kabuto. The moment he saw Nangongja, Sasuke knew that he was safe. Even if there was a Kabuto behind him, for Nangongja, it was completely easy to eliminate him. Only the stronger he was, the more Sasuke understood how powerful Nangong-sensei was when he was young. Not knowing how long it took, Sasuke opened his heavy eyelids, and a slightly dazzling sunlight penetrated through the window of the room where he was. Instinctively, he picked up the silver-white long sword beside him. After looking around vigilantly, Sasuke recalled the fact that he met Nangongja after leaving the base and then fell asleep. Listening to the sound of the wind and the faint sound of birds and insects, Sasuke's heart, which had been tense for 3 years, finally quietly relaxed. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have to worry about whether he would be assassinated or poisoned. Such a relaxed day made Sasuke feel a long-lost peace. Lying back on the rough wooden bed he just slept on, Sasuke didn't close his eyes to rest. Instead, he opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling in front of him. Nearly 3 years of highly stressful life, Sasuke didn't have a chance to relax at all. Every day, he would think about how to make himself stronger, and every day, he would think about how to survive. When all the threats were gone, Sasuke's heart became unexpectedly empty at this moment. What else do I care about? Sasuke thought for a long time, and found that it seems that the most important thing to him was his family and his teammates in Woodleaf. Was it time for her to complete her goal and face her brother head-on? Chapter 434. Faintly, Sasuke felt that his forehead was gently stroked by someone. It seems that because of the environment, Sasuke unknowingly fell into a dream again on this rough wooden bed. Feeling the soft warmth coming from his forehead, Sasuke couldn't help but whisper in his mouth, "Mom. I miss you so much." It was just an instinctive whisper, but when it came out of his mouth, Sasuke really felt like he was being hugged in someone's arms. This feeling was so familiar, although it wasn't as wide as he remembered, the warm touch was the same. Sasuke wanted to open his eyes, but he was afraid that everything he felt now was his illusion. Slightly trembling eyelids and constantly trembling eyelashes, it was enough to see how Sasuke's heart was at the moment. "Child, it's okay. It's all over now. Open your eyes. Mommy is by your side." Uchiha Mikoto's voice appeared in Sasuke's ears. Is all this real? Whether it was the initial touch on the forehead or the subsequent hug, it was all because of such a familiar voice. The moment Sasuke heard the voice, he opened his eyes. Lifting his head from the warm embrace, Sasuke saw a face that appeared countless times in his dreams. Long black hair, black eyes, and a face that always looked gentle. "Mom. Mom. Mom. This is really my mom." The moment he saw Uchiha Mikoto, Sasuke's eyes were filled with tears. Sasuke wanted to say something, he wanted to tell his mother how much he missed her. But when the words came out of his mouth, they all turned into silent sobs. Seeing her child's appearance, Mikoto's heart also fiercely clenched. After so many years, how many things have her child experienced? Mikoto occasionally got some news from Nangongja, Nangongro, and Mashiro. Living alone in Woodleaf with no one to take care of him, in order to become stronger, he ran to Orochimaru. When she heard such news, Mikoto didn't know how many nights she hid in bed and cried secretly. Even several times, Mikoto begged Nangongja to let her go back to Woodleaf to see her child. Seeing Sasuke's lonely appearance, if Mikoto didn't know the consequences of her appearance, she might have already stayed by Sasuke's side to take care of him. Every time Mikoto had the chance to see her child, she would always hold back her tears and clean up the room that was a bit messy due to living alone. Many times, when Sasuke was still living in Woodleaf, he was surprised to find that his room was a lot tidier in the morning, but he couldn't find the reason. It was because Mikoto went back to see her child. After sobbing for a while, Sasuke forced himself to calm down. "I saw with my own eyes that my parents were killed by my brother, Uchiha Itachi, so why is my mother able to appear in front of me?" "Mom. You weren't killed by my brother?" Hearing Sasuke's question, Mikoto's eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of sadness. It wasn't the kind of sadness because she was betrayed by her own family, but the same kind of heartache as she looked at Sasuke. "Your brother, Mikoto just wanted to tell Sasuke the truth of the matter, but her eyes failed to live up to her expectations and tears flowed out, and they couldn't stop for a long time." Sasuke looked at his mother's appearance, but he didn't want to ask his mother the truth and hurt her heart. The door of Sasuke's room was slowly pushed open, and Nangongja and Uchiha Fugaku slowly walked into the room together. Seeing his wife crying, Fugaku didn't ignore his wife's crying like Sasuke remembered, and kept a cold face. Instead, with a face full of care, he gently hugged Mikoto, and whispered as if he was comforting his wife. Nangongja looked at the state of Mikoto and Fugaku, and naturally knew that he could only tell Sasuke these things, so he slowly sat on the edge of Sasuke's bed, and with a little nostalgia and admiration in his eyes, he said to Sasuke, "I know, you must want to know the truth about that bloody night." Sasuke's eyes firmly stared at Nangongja's face. Although he didn't speak, Nangongja understood that Sasuke really wanted him to know the truth. "Sasuke, in your eyes, what kind of image is the Uchiha clan? Are they amiable neighbors, or simple and honest clansmen? The truth I'm telling you now will overturn everything you know about your childhood. That's because the Uchiha clan is not as kind and amiable as you think." Looking at Sasuke's face, Nangongja said seriously. And Sasuke naturally felt Nangongja's sincerity, and his whole body couldn't help but tense up. "You should know, at the beginning of Woodleaf Village, the two pillars that supported Woodleaf Village were the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan. When you were born, the Senju clan was gradually declining, so the Uchiha clan became the only clan left in Woodleaf. This transcendent status not only brought the Uchiha clan a very high status, but it also brought the Uchiha clan an inestimable ambition. Because almost no one in Woodleaf can fight against the power of the Uchiha clan. The people who stand at the second place will always unconsciously look up to the first place. And for the Uchiha clan, who is almost under one and above thousands of people in Woodleaf, they also put their eyes on the top of Woodleaf, the position of Hokage." Listening to Nangongja's words, Sasuke's eyes flashed with a trace of agreement. Just like when he was with Orochimaru, Kabuto always looked for trouble with him. Uchiha clan, perhaps at that time, had the same mentality as Kabuto. But almost all the Hokages of Woodleaf had a close relationship with the Senju clan, and the strength of the Uchiha clan was also feared by many people, so it was impossible to push themselves to the position of Hokage through normal means. So at that time, the head of the Uchiha clan, your father, Uchiha Fugaku, proposed a dangerous plan to push the Uchiha clan to the top, a coup d'état. Chapter 435. When he heard Nangongja mention his father, Sasuke couldn't help but look in the direction of his father. After all, this room wasn't big, and Uchiha Fugaku, who was also in the room, could naturally hear Nangongja's words. However, Fugaku was still wholeheartedly comforting his wife, and he ignored all of Nangongja's words. "But, is there an impenetrable wall in this world?" Nangongja continued to speak, which attracted Sasuke's somewhat deviated gaze back to him. The Uchiha clan's plot was inevitably discovered by the Woodleaf's higher-ups. At that time, the three generations Hokage wanted to use a conciliatory way to make the Uchiha clan give up such a dangerous idea. However, there was another person in the Woodleaf who also had unparalleled power. He believed that the best way to continue the peace and stability of the Woodleaf was to eliminate the Uchiha clan. This person was the leader of the original root, who has now been expelled from the Woodleaf, Shimura Danzo. Although the fact that Shimura Danzo was expelled from the Woodleaf by Nangongja and Watergate wasn't covered up, this kind of cover-up could only deceive those who didn't have any power. Sasuke, who stayed by Orochimaru's side, naturally came into contact with some information about this matter. Originally, Sasuke didn't care much about Danzo, who had nothing to do with him, but now he didn't expect Nangongja to mention Shimura Danzo again. You should know that root is also a part of the Umbu, and it's not an exaggeration to call it the Umbu of the Umbu. At that time, your older brother was a member of the Umbu. Under a deliberate arrangement, your older brother Itachi Uchiha finally met with Danzo. As the leader of roots, it's easy for me to investigate Itachi. Danzo knew that Itachi may not care about many things, but his family has always been the most precious thing to him. Although Sasuke didn't know Danzo's character, when he heard Nangongja's words, his heart couldn't help but lift. The thin veil covering everything that happened around him seemed to be unraveling by Nangongja little by little. So, Danzo gave Itachi a choice, to help Root destroy the Uchiha clan and save his brother's life, or directly die in the Uchiha clan's hands and deaths. As for Itachi's final choice, I think you already know. In order to save your life, your older brother was really ready to put the sword in his hand on the necks of his parents. But at that time, I arrived in time. After talking with Itachi, we worked together to fake your parents' death. Then I secretly rescued your parents and hid them in a different space attached to the ninja world where my summon beast lived until now. With that, Nangongja looked at Sasuke's eyes and said very seriously, your older brother's hands are indeed stained with the blood of his own clansmen. This is his sin. But your older brother also did everything he could do just to save your life. This is his love. Itachi Uchiha, what a pitiful person. Listening to Nangongja's words, Sasuke couldn't help but put himself in Itachi's shoes. If all of this happened to him, what choice would he make? I don't know, I really don't know. Sasuke had no way to get the answer, because no matter how hard Sasuke tried to make himself make the idea of exchanging roles with Itachi Uchiha, the resistance from the heart made Sasuke unwilling to continue thinking about it. Standing up from the bed, Sasuke slowly walked to his parents and quietly looked at his father and mother. Perhaps Fugaku's comfort worked, or she felt Sasuke's gaze. Mikoto's sobbing gradually stopped. Seeing that Mikoto's mental state had stabilized, Fugaku looked at Sasuke and said, Sasuke, all of this is my. Halfway through his words, Sasuke forcibly interrupted his father's words. Don't say anything like an apology, after all, the past is the past. And now. Looking at Fugaku and Mikoto's faces, and Uchiha Fugaku's face, Sasuke slowly said, and now, without all the pressure from Uchiha, I believe that father will be able to take good care of mother. The rest is naturally my brother and me. Our Uchiha clan may have been wrong. But such a punishment is indeed a bit too much. I, together with my brother, will definitely seek justice for us. Not for Uchiha, just for our family. Fugaku actually wanted to persuade Sasuke to give up the idea of revenge, but looking at Sasuke's firm look, Fugaku knew that even if he said more, there was no way to change his child's mind. Whether it's himself, Itachi, or his youngest son Sasuke in front of him, they all have a stubborn temperament. She couldn't persuade him otherwise. No matter how thorny the road was, her man would walk to the end without saying a word. Sigh. As if he wanted to express the depression in his chest, after a sigh, Fugaku looked at his child and said, I know I can't change your mind, you and I are too similar. But after living with your mother in such a peaceful place for the past few years, I've slowly smoothed out my edges and corners. But no matter what, you are my child, Uchiha Fugaku. No matter what kind of suffering you suffer, you must hold back all the tears in your eyes. Because, as long as it's a choice you make, you must unswervingly carry it out. I don't regret my original actions, I only regret that I didn't think it through enough. I know it's not a good habit, but I still hope that you cannot regret every decision you make, good or bad. Do you understand what I mean? I'm proud of my child, Uchiha Sasuke. When Fugaku said these words, Sasuke finally found some of Fugaku's iron-blooded posture when he was the head of the Uchiha clan. Chapter 436. Nangong, Sensei, please take me away from here. I still have things I have to do. After determining what he wanted to do now and in the future, Sasuke finally didn't have the confusion and emptiness he had after coming here, and his eyes were shining again. Turning around, looking at Nangongja, Sasuke asked to leave. Because Sasuke knew that there was still someone in the shinobi world who needed his help, and now was not the time to enjoy the peace brought by reuniting with his parents. Although she was reluctant to part with her child, Mikoto still didn't stop Sasuke from leaving. Because Itachi Uchiha, who was struggling in the shinobi world, was also her child, and Mikoto didn't want her precocious child to continue to experience the torment and suffering of today. Nangongja looked at Sasuke and nodded. Taking Sasuke away from the wooden house where Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Mikoto lived, he came to the open space outside the wooden house, and slowly unsheathed the sword on his back and inserted it into the ground, and a magic circle quickly formed. Nangongja and Sasuke walked into the magic circle together, and their figures disappeared from the Lion Clan's different space. Seeing her child's figure disappear in front of her eyes, Mikoto, who had been forcing herself to maintain a smile, finally couldn't resist the sadness in her heart, and lying in Fugaku's arms, she burst into tears. In another wooden house next to Uchiha Fugaku's wooden house, Uchiha Yuri Koyuri, who was also the last member of the Uchiha clan, was also looking at Fugaku's couple, and his eyes were full of complex emotions, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, Yuri Koyuri's eyes unconsciously turned into the scarlet Sharingan that represented the Uchiha clan, and the three Tomo in Yuri Koyuri's eyes were rotating, and there were even signs of connecting. Sasuke still left. Even though he knew that Nangongja had a lot of information about his brother, Shimura Danzo, and Akatsuki, Sasuke still didn't ask much. He just left Nangongja and jumped into the bottomless ocean of the shinobi world. Since Sasuke has made his own decision, Nangongja thinks that he shouldn't interfere too much. As long as he keeps his attention on Sasuke, it's enough to provide help to Sasuke in a timely situation. What Nangongja should be worried about now was not Sasuke's matter, but something else. Nangongja was infuriated by the fact that the Akatsuki made Kakuzu and Haiden attack Wood Leaf and then secretly captured Nibi and Sanbai. Nangongja felt like he was being looked down upon, which made him very uncomfortable. Since he had been made a fool of, he naturally shouldn't suffer in silence like this. Nangongja decided that he would also make Akatsuki suffer, only then would he be able to avenge himself. Nangongja didn't dare to say that he could completely eliminate the Akatsuki. After all, the Akatsuki may have some hidden cards that they haven't used yet. But with the power of himself and the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Nangongja believed that he could give the Akatsuki a few setbacks. During this time, Nangongja actually discovered that Jiraiya quietly left Wood Leaf and secretly tracked the Akatsuki's information. So of course, he didn't mind giving Jiraiya some help and sharing some of the key information he collected with him. As the sensei of the Akatsuki's leader, Jiraiya should also be able to play a very effective role, right? Not only that, Nangongja also intends to unconditionally share the information of the Akatsuki with other ninja villages in the ninja world. Even if such information can't get the attention he expects, in order to protect the people of his ninja village, Column Force, every ninja village will take action. At that time, let's see what kind of price the Akatsuki will pay to collect the bijou. Nangongja inserted his Heaven's Disaster sword into the ground again, and through the Lion Clan's different space, he came to the headquarters of the Blood Cloak Pavilion with his own mark. Without disturbing anyone, Nangongja quietly entered his office. He read the scrolls on his desk over and over again, and sometimes even compared the map of the ninja world hanging in his office, silently thinking about something. And Jiraiya, who was constantly looking for information about the Akatsuki in the ninja world, was walking on the street at this moment, looking slightly depressed. Since returning to Wood Leaf and seeing the improvement of the relationship between Watergate and Naruto, Jiraiya quietly told Watergate and left Wood Leaf to look for information about the Akatsuki in the ninja world. Whether it was Jiraiya or Minato, both of them were very concerned about Akatsuki's affairs, and all the fragmented information about Akatsuki obtained from Root made Jiraiya especially concerned about this organization established by his three disciples, who once had a master-disciple relationship with him. What kind of thing happened that made the organization created by his three kind disciples become such a threat to the entire shinobi world? But no matter how hard Jiraiya tried, and didn't hesitate to follow up every clue related to the Akatsuki, these clues all led to a dead end. After all, Jiraiya is just one person, although he can occasionally borrow some resources from Wood Leaf. The Akatsuki itself is very concerned about the confidentiality of its information, and Wood Leaf can't put all its intelligence power on the Akatsuki. In the ninja world, there are many forces that need the Wood Leaf village to focus on, but because of the lack of personnel, Woodleaf can only choose among these forces. Even Watergate, whether it's because of his duty as Hokage or because of his own personal feelings, it's impossible for him to be so strict. And now, the reason why Jiraiya's face was full of depression, because a very valuable clue once again led to a dead end. In order to relieve the depression in his heart, Jiraiya decided to go out for a drink. Casually looking at the shops on the street, Jiraiya's eyes caught the sign of an izakaya. Since he just wanted to drink a little wine, an izakaya appeared in front of him, and it seemed to be an old shop. Jiraiya naturally couldn't stop the alcohol in his stomach and immediately walked to the izakaya. Under the hospitality of the waiter, Jiraiya sat in a slightly secluded corner. Casually ordering a plate of assorted snacks and a sake, Jiraiya sat on the tatami in a daze. Chapter 437. Perhaps Jiraiya's mind was too tense during this period of time. When Jiraiya sat in his seat, he unconsciously emptied his mind. When Jiraiya regained his spirit, the sake and snacks he ordered were already placed on the small table on the tatami in front of him. The sake didn't come in the form of a large glass bottle. Instead, it was placed in a crude-looking wine separator. This crude porcelain separator was placed in a small pot on a copper stove to maintain a warm temperature. Jiraiya picked up a small piece of cloth next to the copper stove and used the cloth as a partition to take out the rough porcelain divider heated on the copper stove. The clear liquor was slowly poured out from the slightly rough porcelain divider. The liquor was slightly sticky, and a fragrance with the smell of cherry blossoms also wafted out from the liquor. Putting the rough porcelain divider back into the hot water, Jiraiya picked up the wine glass in front of him and sniffed it gently. The sweet fragrance of cherry blossoms became stronger, and a look of satisfaction appeared on Jiraiya's face. The heavy pressure that entangled his soul and heart was weakened a little at this moment because of this fragrance. Sure enough, this izakaya that can last for a long time has its own advantages. Thinking of this, Jiraiya couldn't help but feel a little proud. After all, he didn't hesitate to choose this izakaya. It was enough to see the precision of his choice and the high taste. He took a sip of the cherry blossoms in the wine glass in his hand. It didn't have the sweet feeling that he imagined. Whether it was the sweetness or the fragrance, it was just right. Holding the sake in his mouth, he slowly felt the taste from the liquor. When Jiraiya felt that he had fully felt the various tastes contained in this warm liquor, Jiraiya swallowed the liquor in his mouth into his stomach. After tasting the sake, Jiraiya couldn't help but be a little interested in the snacks provided by this izakaya. Jiraiya put his hand on the plate with the snacks and wanted to reach out and pick up a snack, but Jiraiya's hand didn't reach out for a long time. It wasn't because of how exquisite the desserts on the plate were, but because Jiraiya saw a piece of paper under the plate in front of him. Jiraiya, who was attracted by the fragrance of sake, was so careless that he didn't notice that there was a piece of paper under the snack plate in front of him. Jiraiya pulled out the paper under the plate without a trace. He didn't deliberately hide it. Instead, he casually looked at the paper in his hand as if he was looking at his shopping receipt. Although Jiraiya's complexion was still so relaxed, but his eyes couldn't help but flash with light. The information of Akatsuki that he had been looking for was actually written clearly on this thin piece of paper at this moment. Akatsuki Organization, Rain Country, please be careful. 3 short words were written on this piece of paper, but the information contained in it exceeded all the information collected by Jiraiya in the past few months. Because this piece of paper had clearly stated the location of Akatsuki, all the secret bases of Akatsuki that were used to confuse the public were all excluded from Jiraiya's mind at this moment. And when he saw the 3 words, Rain Country, Jiraiya instantly became enlightened. Yes. Wasn't the country of Rain the place that had the most contact with his 3 disciples? It's the place where they struggled to survive in the war, it's the place where they first established Akatsuki, it's the place where they really determined their aspirations. But how could he have unknowingly overlooked such an obvious point? Perhaps it's because Akatsuki suffered a big loss here, so they will definitely change their organization's base. Remembering such a short few words in his mind, Jiraiya was just about to tear up the paper in his hand, but he couldn't help but put his eyes on the short few words on the paper. These 3 lines of words were written with strong strokes and full of power. It's almost the first time Jiraiya saw it. The most important thing is that after staring at these words for a long time, his eyes can't help but feel a tingling sensation. This feeling, Jiraiya only felt on one person, and that was Nangongja, who couldn't perfectly hide the sword chi in his body. It seems that this message is from Nangongja, right? Nangongja is also very mysterious to Jiraiya. After all, Nangongja has always been staying in the wood leaf, seemingly aloof from worldly affairs, but whenever something very important happens, Jiraiya can always see Nangongja's figure in the light or in the dark. But at this moment, Jiraiya's heart is completely tied to his 3 former disciples in the Rain Country, especially Nagato, who has red hair and eyes from the Rikudo Sennin. Jiraiya has no idea what the power contained in such a pair of eyes will be like when used to the extreme. Compared to such a direct threat, Nangongja's interesting little secret is not so important. After all, the current Nangongja can't be said to be harmless, but at least for the wood leaf, there is no big threat to the ninja world. After staring at the paper for a long time, Jiraiya tore the paper in his hand that Nangongja personally wrote, and the sword chi mixed in the paper was released in an instant. Obviously, it was only as thick as a silk thread, but when it passed through the coarse porcelain wine separator, it directly cut the wine separator in half, and the cut surface was extremely smooth. Really impulsive. If I knew this would happen, I would have gone out and tore this paper, wasting a pot of wine. Instead of lamenting the powerful attack of Nangongja's sword chi, Jiraiya began to regret that he only drank a cup of sake. Jiraiya's heart is really big. Looking at the coarse porcelain wine separator that has been filled with a lot of hot water, Jiraiya shook his head slightly, took out a few coins from his arms and put them on the table. Without looking back, Jiraiya directly walked out of the izakaya's door, but the clerk in the izakaya completely ignored Jiraiya, and didn't even check how much money Jiraiya left and let him leave. If you look carefully at the signboard of this izakaya, you may find a small and imperceptible red mark on the signboard at the door of this izakaya, which is the symbol of the Bloodcloak Pavilion. Chapter 438. Next to a waterfall near the periphery of Woodleaf, Naruto was topless at the moment, and his shadow clones were standing neatly in a row in front of the waterfall. Watergate's goal for Naruto was to let Watergate use his chakra to stop the flow of the waterfall, and then let the waterfall flow backward. After a period of hard work, Naruto was able to stop the waterfall, but it has been difficult for him to make the waterfall flow backward through the strong wind generated by his chakra. Especially when he heard that under the guidance of Shikamaru Trio, Yuan Fei and Asuma lost an arm in order to stop the Akatsuki from coming to Woodleaf to capture Nine Tails, Naruto's heart became more and more impatient. But things are often like this, more haste, less speed. That impatient mood made Naruto's progress even slower, and even faintly, it was difficult to maintain the current level. After all, he is his own child. Watergate naturally understands Naruto's mentality. But Watergate knows that he can't say too much about such things. Maybe his persuasion will indeed let Naruto get rid of the current confusion, but every time Naruto falls into a dilemma, he can't rely on others' help to get out of the predicament, right? As a qualified ninja, he must learn to face all difficulties. Watergate is very clear about this, so he resisted his desire to persuade his child. Watergate can only stand beside the waterfall and watch Naruto compete with the waterfall, and with himself. Damn it! Why can't I succeed? If I can become stronger, then all this won't happen. Looking at the waterfall that stopped in front of him for a moment, but continued to flow again, Naruto's mouth made a violent roar, and all the shadow clones turned into disgust. Naruto fiercely sat in the water, his right hand clenched into a fist, and punched the water. Circles of water splashed high under the influence of Naruto's strength. Seeing Naruto's discouraged and angry appearance, Watergate's figure suddenly appeared beside Naruto. Naruto raised his head and looked at his father who appeared beside him, and his eyes couldn't help but have a look of hope. Obviously, he hoped that his father, who is far superior to him, can give him some guidance on such matters. But at the moment, Watergate's face was not the excited and warm smile he had when he was training and researching with him. Instead, it was more like the usual Watergate's face that Naruto saw in the Hokage's office, with a serious and cold look on his face. "Are you done acting like a spoiled child?" Watergate looked condescendingly at Naruto, who was sitting on the ground, and looked at the depressed Naruto on the ground. Hearing Watergate's words, Naruto just wanted to open his mouth and argue for himself, but he was abruptly suppressed by Watergate's serious and cold eyes. As a person, it's normal to instinctively seek help from others when you encounter difficulties. So now that you have encountered difficulties in your training, I can completely understand your feelings of wanting me to give you some advice. But you are not only an ordinary person, but also a ninja who puts his own life on the line. When performing tasks, you not only have to face the enemy's attack, but also have to face all kinds of problems from the enemy or from your own side. At that time, are you sure you can find a person to point out a bright way for you to face the difficulties you face? Watergate's words were sincere and cold. But Naruto understood the meaning of Watergate. Watergate didn't want him to rely too much on others. As a ninja, as long as he accepts the task, although he can use the strength and assistance of his teammates, but in the end, he still needs to grow his own strength. Now Naruto, in Watergate's view, has not reached a situation where he can't break through the dilemma. In this case, Watergate certainly doesn't want Naruto to rely on others. "I understand, Dad. I will continue to work hard. After all, between father and son, there is no need for so many words, often just a few short words, both sides understand each other's meaning. Perhaps this is the way men communicate with each other." Ninjutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto put his hands in front of him, and clouds of smoke were produced around Naruto. After resummoning his shadow clones, Naruto and his shadow clones looked at each other and said loudly, "What is our ninjutsu?" Hearing Naruto's words, Naruto's shadow clones were also excited in an instant. "Go forward bravely, that is our ninjutsu." One by one, the shadow clones either clenched their fists or jumped in the air, shouting their slogans excitedly. Seeing his shadow clone jutsu so excited, Naruto nodded and said with relief, "That's right. Yes, I am the man who will become the Hokage. Such a small problem is just a stone on the road in front of us. Now, let's go all out." "Oh. Let's go. Yes, it's just a small difficulty." Looking at Naruto and his shadow clones encouraging each other, Watergate's face couldn't help but pull out a smile. The only person who can maintain such a relationship with his shadow clone jutsu is Naruto, right? Seeing Naruto's fighting spirit reignited, Watergate also nodded with relief. During this period of time, Watergate actually had a lot of official business to deal with, and they were all important affairs that needed to be dealt with personally, so after seeing Naruto return to normal, Watergate also used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to leave the waterfall. Naruto, who was concentrating on his own training, also completely devoted his mind to his own training. With the Flying Thunder God technique, Minato arrived in his office. Suddenly, Minato's eyebrows slightly knitted together. He bit his thumb and quickly made a hand seal. After that, he pressed his hand to the ground and said softly, "You're right. You're right." Summoning Jutsu. A small and delicate toad appeared in front of the water gate and said respectfully to the water gate, "The water gate has been destroyed. Watergate-sama, Jiraiya-sama asked me to pass you a piece of information. The matter is very important, and I hope you can deal with it as soon as possible." When hearing the name of Jiraiya, Watergate immediately connected the matter about Akatsuki that Jiraiya was painstakingly searching for, and his heart couldn't help but slowly sink. Chapter 439. Hearing the news from the little toad, Minato's mood became gloomy, but out of respect for the toads of Mount Myaboku and his dignity as a Hokage, Minato forced himself to calm down, and said to the little toad in front of him, "Ha ha ha, I'm sorry. In that case, give me the letter that Jiraiya-sensei gave me first." The little toad nodded, then opened his mouth wide, and a scroll bigger than the little toad's body was spat out from his mouth. Even though it was spat out from their mouths, the scroll wasn't stained with any mucus from the toads' mouths. This was because the little toads used to communicate normally cultivated a special secret technique. Not only did their mouths lead to their stomachs, they also led to a small space used to store items. Watergate took the scroll spat out by the little toad, smiled at the little toad and said, "Okay, I've got the letter. You can go back and report first." The little toad seemed to like Watergate very much. The little toad's face showed a toad-like smile, and said to Watergate in his slightly immature voice, "Okay, Watergate-sama. If there's anything else, remember to call me." Looking at the lively appearance of the little toad, the worry in Watergate's heart was unconsciously relieved. Watergate stretched out his hand and patted the little toad's head a few times, then said to the little toad very gently, "Got it. You go back and report first. If there's a letter that needs to be sent, I will ask you to deliver it to me." After being patted on the head by Watergate and hearing Watergate's words, the little toad looked satisfied. A burst of smoke rose, and the figure of the little toad slowly disappeared. But after the figure disappeared, the little toad still left a soft murmur in the air before he left. "Minato-sama is still the best. He's sunny and handsome. Unlike Jiraiya-sama, who looks like a perverted uncle. Every time he sees me, he always has a bad look on his face. Sometimes he even jokes about me. I'm a girl." Of course, the little toad didn't know that the murmur before he left was clearly heard by Watergate's sensitive ears. Watergate's face couldn't help but show a bit of an awkward smile. Is my sensei's reputation now bad enough to reach Mount Myaboku? Although Minato felt that he couldn't tell what a male toad looked like and what a female toad looked like, he didn't know. After expelling these complicated thoughts from his head one by one, Minato picked up the scroll that Jiraiya passed to him and carefully observed the lines on the scroll. Minato put the scroll on his desk and quickly printed a few hand seals. Then, Watergate gently pressed his hand on the scroll, and a burst of light surged, and the dark red lines on the scroll slowly disappeared. Seeing that the seal on the scroll has been unlocked, Watergate finally took the scroll back in his hand. Slowly opening the scroll, Watergate began to browse the text in it. But the more he read, the gloomier Watergate's face became. Jiraiya-sensei actually went to the Rain Country alone to stop his former disciple from continuing such a dangerous action? And the source of Jiraiya-sensei's information is actually Nangongja, who has been living in Woodleaf. Watergate's heart at this moment couldn't help but burst into anger. At this moment, Watergate just wanted to push the door directly, go to Nangongja's house, grab Nangongja's collar, and ask why Nangongja deliberately pushed his sensei into such a dangerous situation. But as a ninja, as a Hokage, his personal feelings can't interfere with his behavior during his tenure. This is the rule that Watergate himself made for himself. Perhaps even Nangongja didn't expect that Jiraiya turned out to be such a reckless person. After all, in Nangongja's impression of Jiraiya, Jiraiya is a relatively stable person. Whether it was when he fought under Jiraiya during the Shinobi World War, or later when he lived in Konoha, Jiraiya's help in all aspects made Nangongja maintain a steady image in his heart. Nangongja gave such information to Jiraiya. In fact, he wanted Jiraiya to inform Watergate, and then gather a certain amount of power in Woodleaf Village to cause a certain amount of hindrance to Akatsuki. But Nangongja never thought that when things involve people close to him, Jiraiya would become so impulsive and arbitrary. He just told Watergate, without even asking for permission, he directly went to face the leader of Akatsuki. Closing the scroll in his hand, Watergate began to slowly estimate Jiraiya's position in his mind. Jiraiya was originally near the border of the Land of Rice and the Land of Fire. After receiving Nangong's information, Jiraiya immediately set off for the Land of Rain after thinking for a while. According to Jiraiya's temperament, at this moment, he must be impatient to a certain extent. In order to increase his speed, Jiraiya is likely to summon the toad from Mount Myaboku. Counting the speed of the letter and Jiraiya's full speed, Watergate desperately found that even if he used Body Flicker Jutsu and Flying Thunder God Jutsu to reach Jiraiya-sensei's side, it seems that he can only see Jiraiya-sensei in the Land of Rain. At that time, everything must have been settled. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Umbu hidden in his office. A man wearing an Umbu mask knelt in front of Watergate, waiting for Watergate's instructions. You immediately inform Shikaku Nara that I have something to do and will leave Woodleaf. I will leave a shadow clone in Woodleaf and let Shikaku Nara be prepared to deal with official business with my shadow clone. The Umbu kneeling in front of Watergate nodded in response to Watergate's order, then his figure flashed and disappeared. Watergate made a hand seal, and a shadow clone appeared beside him. Minato said to his shadow doppelganger, then, I'll leave everything in Woodleaf to you. No matter what, I have to catch up with Jiraiya-sensei as soon as possible. At least, I have to ensure Jiraiya-sensei's life. Watergate's shadow clone and Watergate were in the same body, so he seriously said to Watergate, be sure to save Jiraiya-sensei's life. I'll take care of everything here. Watergate heard his shadow clone's words, nodded, and then immediately used Body Flicker Jutsu to leave the Hokage's office. Soon after, Watergate immediately summoned Gamabunta to hurry on his way outside the Woodleaf. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.